Hey everyone, it's Dave. What's up? I didn't want to do this podcast. I never want to do a podcast like this. I hope it's the last one I have to do. But we lost our friend Ron GUARDIPEE recently. When this comes out, it'll have been a couple weeks, and it has been hard on everybody. It's been rough. I've been getting a lot of really wonderful messages from people checking in. And, seeing an incredible outpouring of love and remembrance of Ron online. There's been some incredible stories that some I had never heard before, some that I knew or new versions of. Ron was a character and a beloved friend and a scoundrel and all of the things you've probably heard about him. So if you don't know, if you're just hearing it here, Ron, who was the singer of Brotherhood, he ran Overkill Records and did a ton of other things. These are just the ways that a lot of us that knew him from the Northwest hardcore scene knew him. Ron passed away after what feels like a fairly short battle with cancer. It's very strange. I listened to this episode that we recorded 3 years ago now, I think. And it's really, it's surreal. It's hard to understand that guy talking to me is no longer here. And, we all deal with this stuff in our own ways, and it takes me a long time to process, and I tend to do it quietly and alone. And, but now some time has gone by and I just wanted to say something. I wanted to do something. I know people have been going back and listening to the podcast episode, so I thought I would re-release it now. No advertising. I'm going to take the front and back stuff off. It's just going to be the podcast. And I'll tell you a story about the podcast that I can tell now, basically, that I think is kind of fun. When Ron came over to record it, Ron and I hadn't necessarily been getting along very well. And this isn't a terrible surprise, people that follow us on social media, but in the last few years, Ron and I had definitely had a split politically. And it isn't something that happened suddenly. This isn't Trump got elected and we had a split. This is something that had been going on for a long time. And Ron used to call me late at night and we'd have these kind of intense debates about various issues. And at one point it just kind of kept going. Like he kind of continued in the direction he was going in, and for me it was frustrating. And I think some of you saw this come out when Ron and I would kind of dust up in public in a public space like social media, because I've known Ron for a long time, and he didn't always have all of those beliefs, or when he had contradictory beliefs, they didn't grade against each other as badly as they seem to recently. This is not a criticism of him. This is just kind of stating what it is. I think people understand that this is who Ron was. If you knew Ron in these later years, I think you understood this part of his personality. And so what I wanted to get to in the story is when Ron came over to record, we were okay, but we'd kind of had a few words. So he got here and we were hanging out. It was the first time he'd actually seen the place I live now. Showing him the place, hanging out in the kitchen, having a drink before we come in to do the podcast. And he was a little nervous. I'm not going to say nervous, because I don't know if that's the right word for Ron. Maybe just apprehensive, right? So I said, hey, I just want you to know that while we're recording, if there's anything that comes up that you're uncomfortable with talking about, you can basically stop the podcast and say, I don't want that. I don't want that to be recorded. I don't want that to come out. And I told him, because I'm not here to ambush you. And he looked at me and said, I assumed that's what I was here for. And then we both started laughing because, I think he was serious. I think he thought that I was going to use his episode of I've Known You Too Long to take him to task. And that's just not what I want to do on this podcast. A little bit for fun every now and then, but come on, this isn't about, dragging people over the coals of their life. So, no, I think what I said to him was, no, dude, this is pure history revisionism. Which he laughed and said, well, that's his favorite thing. So, and it's kind of true in a lot of enjoyable ways. But you'll see what I'm talking about when we get into the episode. There's some stuff with the band Crumble and fake lists and his zines and things like that I think are a lot of fun. So, I don't know. The world without Ron going forward is going to be, it's going to be a lonelier place. I know that for sure. There's going to be less rage, the good kind. So with that, let's listen to the episode and remember our friend. Hello again. Welcome in to another episode of I've Known You Too Long. I'm Dave Larson. You probably know who I am by now. My guest today is Ron GUARDIPEE. Ron used to run Overkill Records. In fact, I think he may still run Overkill Records.
Yep.
There he is. And he also sang famously for Brotherhood and for Resolution. And he's done a number of other things in his life, too. We're going to get to that throughout the course of this podcast. Ron, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Dave.
Ron, I've known you too long.
We've known each other a long, long time.
So,
we've been roommates for a long, long time.
Oh yeah,
we know each other very well.
Oh, we've got a lot of history. So, what has happened in each of the previous episodes? Essentially, I think each one is that I've known you too long meant that I've known you so long, I can't even remember when we met. So we try to figure that out. With you, I think I actually know the day. I think I know the moment.
Okay,
and
I'm drawing a blank.
That's okay, because I think if I say it, you'll remember it.
Okay, okay.
That's good. So just to give you an idea of what we do in this podcast is we figure out as close as we can the moment that we met. And then we go backwards from there and kind of figure out why it was we came together in that place. Like, where did you come from? What are you all about? What made you that person who would be involved in what you were involved in, where we would meet up? And then we go forward and talk about stuff that's happened since that. And that's the whole thing.
Okay. I have a guess.
Tell me what your guess is.
Fallout.
Oh, no.
Hanging out at Fallout.
Fallout is a really good guess.
Okay.
But no.
All right. Shoot.
It is First Step in Brotherhood in Lenny's Basement.
Okay. Oh, yeah. All right.
That sound right?
That sounds about right.
It's not the show that the pictures on the
second
record.
Show.
It's the second show.
Yeah.
I don't think First Step played the first show.
No, the first show was would have just been Brotherhood and Refuse, maybe. I don't even know if they were a band then, actually.
No, and you know what? I'm pretty sure the show that I'm talking about was Brotherhood, First Step, and Refused in Lenny's Basement. And I could see the flyer in my head.
Yeah. No, I have the flyer still at home.
We got there late. We missed Refused. First Step played. And then we watched you guys play. And it was the first actual, like, modern hardcore show I'd ever been to. I mean, it's a basement, but people crammed together, no mosh pit, not a circle pit. We were all punk skateboarders from Bellingham, you know, and we were used to that kind of show. And this was like a smash together of people singing along, pointing
That's
fingers.
what it was, man. How much fun? How much fun was that?
There's no... I knew while you guys were playing, I knew that something had changed, at least for me. I don't know if everybody felt that way. But so afterwards, you already knew Jason Lambert and Brett Van Horn. And I think from First Step, because that's how they set up the show. And so I'm fairly certain it was Jason that walked me up to you and said, "This is Dave," and we did the handshake.
And I remember at the time, also that same night, you were saying, "Oh, you know what? I almost went and saw you guys with Youth of Today," and I was like, "I wasn't in the band then, dude. So fuck that version."
Oh, and that would have either been me or Bill. But I think because I didn't make it to that show, and Bill may have actually tried to go to that show. So, and you weren't in Brotherhood yet.
Not at that time. No, that was my third show that you saw.
Okay, that was the third time playing with Brotherhood?
Yep.
Well, we did this fast, because a lot of times there's a lot more hemming and hawing in trying to figure it out and narrowing it down.
Well, Jesus, I talk about this stuff all the time to people. That's how lame I am. Like, let me relive my past a little with you.
It's a good time, man. That can't be considered an insult on this show. That's pretty much what we do.
That's it. Okay.
So now that's fine, but after that,
you and I quickly became very good friends.
Because after that, you're just in the picture.
Yeah.
So the next time we were probably in the same place, maybe was that show with Ad Odds in the storage unit up in Bellingham.
That was probably it, because that got set up pretty quickly. Right after that.
And so on that night, I felt like I already knew you. So we may have run into each other at Fallout. Because if you've got a Fallout memory, I know we ran into each other at Fallout. So we were coming from Bellingham maybe once a week to Seattle.
Well, and that also became a time when, I mean, I'd go up there all the time. I mean, that became, well, a little bit later as well.
A little bit. Once Undertow really started to kick in.
Yeah. It seems like, man, we were together, all of us were together every day, every weekend. You know, you guys would be down, we'd be up, vice versa.
It got really good. So we're gonna get to that. That's gonna be.
Sorry.
That's gonna. No, that's fine. I'm just gonna direct the way it goes. Where did you come from?
Well, I'm from Seattle, North Seattle.
Yeah,
fact,
before
just
that,
very close to here.
I mean, when you grew up as a young kid here.
Yeah, young little metalhead. You know, got into music in the '70s through my older sister, and started going to metal shows in the early '80s.
In Seattle, because I was under the impression it was you were on the east side.
No, man, no. Well, in North Seattle and in Redmond.
Oh, okay, but
so
not
just across,
not Spokane, Eastern Washington. Out
there. That came later. That came when I was a teenager. You know?
Okay, so where were you born?
I was born in Spokane.
Okay,
moved to Centralia, Washington.
Okay,
moved to Redmond. Moved to Seattle.
I don't think I ever knew you lived in Redmond, but you were so young. I wouldn't have known that.
Got kicked out of all the high schools in Seattle. Had to finish high school somewhere.
That was in your high school.
Yeah, even got kicked out of the alternative school.
So understanding the kind of metal Ron going to shows and get kicked out of high schools, it's going to be easier to understand if we understand what much younger Ron was like.
Trouble.
You were trouble. Would you say in grade school you were trouble?
Yeah.
What kind of?
I got into serious trouble. You know, like I couldn't go to school for 4 months. Kind of stuff.
For fighting, for stealing, for vandalism.
You know,
Since this is an audio medium and not a visual medium, I just saw a series of hand motions that can only be described as, I think, sketchy.
Yeah, well, I did a lot of sketchy shit, and I spent a lot of time in youth detention center. So
really, and you're talking about grade school. You're talking about 10 years old and younger.
8 was the first.
Wow.
My first encounter with getting caught.
Okay, so we're just talking about when you got caught, but there's also
I was a bad kid, man. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We said this earlier, man. I like the dark side. I always have. Always been into that.
And you were drawn to the dark side as a young child.
Yeah. I don't know why. Just once,
Did you have a lot of friends back then?
Oh yeah, man.
So you were always a personable. So were you like the kid that like tried to get a bunch of other kids together to do some devious deeds?
Yeah.
That didn't change then.
No, I've kind of always tried to, get kids together and let's fuck some shit up.
What was influencing you to act that way when you were that young?
All kinds of things happen. I started, drinking and doing drugs, at a pretty early age.
Prior to high school?
Yeah.
Junior high?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of seems like where the choices start getting made.
Yeah. Like about 12. And got pretty serious into that. And lasted.
So early 80s, heavy metal parking lot type times.
Full blown, but I was a Slayer metalhead. I was a Motorhead metalhead. I was the real deal. Venom. They were all posers.
No, those were the bands you were listening to when you were in junior high, 6th, 7th, 8th grade.
No, that would have been high school.
High school, right? Because it seems like for the people
those bands didn't pop up really until '82, and that was my first year of high school.
82 was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think I thought we were a little bit closer in age, but you are at least a couple years older than I am.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And so 9th grade, you're going into high school, and that's when a lot of this really amazing music is coming out. Metal.
That's exactly the time. Yeah, it was like an easy transition. Sabbath are heavy, but Motorhead's heavier. All right, man, I'm listening to Motorhead, and that's also right around the same time when punk started to become something.
Now, since you were listening to metal, how did you feel about punk when you first heard it or became aware of it?
Well, like anybody who wasn't involved in the scene fully, my idea of it was, fucking Chips episodes or some shit, like Mayhem on whatever that Jack Klugman show.
Oh, Quincy Punks.
Yeah, Quincy Punks. Thank you. But then in high school,
my favorite line from that is when they talk about the girl being dead, and the one punk says, "But at least she's free, man."
Right. Good. Excellent one. That was it. But there were like punks in when I went to high school here at Ingram High School, North Seattle. And they listened to Venom. They listened to Motorhead. And so it was like, what the hell? I mean, these guys are supposed to be, these weirdos, crazy hair, but they basically look just like us, but they have, shorter hair and different pins, on their jacket.
So I like that. Like, I knew a lot of guys like that, and I was definitely not a metal kid. I was a punk rock skateboarder kid that came in from more like listening to stuff like The Cure and like weird, like, Depeche Mode, crap
right.
like that.
So that would have been my version of, if you would have asked me then, what's punk? That.
Oh, okay. But and it was one of those things where whatever kind of gets you to it, But once we get there, I'd be hanging out with some dude that was really into metal and Venom and whatever, and then we'd get along because we both liked Minor Threat, or we'd get along because we both liked these different things, and we loved going to shows together because there'd be a pit, and then if that guy's there, that means there'll be three of us running in a circle, But every time those guys had friends that were like them that did not like us. And the one example, tell me if you had anything like this in your life. The smoke hole, basically the place in high school where everyone would come together to smoke. It was across the street from the school, and it was always metalhead dudes, and then punk rocker dudes would go there, and skateboarders and the girl, and everything was usually fine, but there was always one or two just glowering, angry, long-haired dudes that wanted nothing to do with punk rock.
Oh yeah,
that were barely putting up with it, and there were some fistfights.
Oh yeah,
and so that you had that experience too.
Well, we had a lot of other issues to fight about at school. Actually, the punks and the metalheads, I don't recall us ever really getting into it. We were fighting in different enemies. You know, jocks. The rednecks, there was
stuff.
A lot of racial shit going on as well. Seriously, at my school at that time.
Right, and I'm up in Bellingham. There's not very much of that because there's not a lot of diversity, and so everybody that was there that wasn't white, we'd all gone to school the whole time, and no one thought of it as different groups of people.
Yeah, well, it was pretty serious.
Pretty serious,
to tell you the truth. So.
And so, okay.
So we all united, and we would smoke cigarettes out at the trees together. That's what we called it, or the goat farm, what was across the street.
Wait, the goat farm was across the street from Ingram?
Yeah.
Now, Bob Swift, who from the Helm,
he teaches there, or
he's a coach. He's
a
running coach at Ingram. So I wonder if
the goat farm is no longer there.
It no longer exists. Was it a literal goat farm?
No, it was just a huge vacant lot that people would take their motorcycles out in, or take your truck out in when you're, and we'd have keggers out there. And
do you know why it was named the Goat Farm?
No idea. There was a long history of stoners and that kind of things going on there that, we came into it and was like, here's the rules, kids.
Nice.
But we had 3 farms, the goat farm, the chicken farm, and the elephant farm. The chicken farm's still there. It's next to the swimming pool, if the swimming pool's still there. So you can ask him about that.
It's called, now, these are just empty spaces?
These are just vacant lots that we would all go get stoned in and drink in.
Goat farm, elephant farm, and
the chicken farm.
And you don't know how any of those names came about?
No idea.
Those are just the codes.
That was it, man. That was it. They were awesome places to hang out, though.
Yeah, you got to have stuff like that.
So, back to punk.
Sure. Oh, yeah, exactly.
That's...
But you were
started meeting punks there. But then there was a venue also, right around the same time in Seattle, the Guerrilla Gardens.
Uh-huh.
And we would go there to see bands, and they had two rooms. One room they'd be having a punk rock show, one room they'd be having a metal show.
At the same time?
At the same time.
Oh.
And so there was a lot of cross-culture going on there, and you'd see these same kids from high school, and I was like, oh, shit, man, that guy was down at that show. He was in the, seeing Soldier, and I was, I don't know, seeing... Guns N' Roses or some shit, they actually played there once.
Nice.
But yeah, that was it. So that's okay.
Okay, well, it's cool. So, but you definitely felt drawn towards the punk rock thing. Like, those people seemed like your brothers in arms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We spent a long time hanging out on the Ave back then as well, because that's where you had to go to score pot unless somebody had it at school, which a lot of people did. But
University Avenue, in the University District,
and you had to go there to get your bongs and get your pipes and buy records. So, and there was this like new wave clothing fashion store, which is across the street from Roosevelt High School, and I cannot remember the name now, but that's where you would go because you could get bullet belts and you could get studded belts, and the punks could go there and get, their shit.
You guys were buying your gear in the same place.
Yeah, man.
It's too much overlap to be enemies.
It was perfect. And then it would be like, okay, well, we're on the Ave. Just got this new pipe, my new bullet belt. Oh, there's homie from school. Let's go blaze one up over here at the, Red Square. Like, all right.
Yeah, that place was sketchy for a long time.
I think it's back to being sketchy.
In all the best ways. I mean, it was a destination for, when we started coming from Bellingham. It was, you go to Fallout, you go to Capitol Hill, you go to the University District, you go to the Ave.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It is still pretty sketchy?
I haven't been there in a long time, but from what I understand, just, reading the news, I know there was a string of break-ins last night. It was on the news today. And
you and I both ended up working in a store.
We're
jumping way ahead, but we both ended up working on a store right on the Ave at Kinko's. You were my boss, sort of.
I think I was your boss. I don't think there was any sorta about it, buddy.
I don't know if we worked together for very long. You were gone real quick. You got me the job and bailed.
Yeah.
We're gonna come ahead of that.
Okay.
I jumped. I just because I went from the Ave to the job, but we'll link that back up when we get a little bit further ahead.
Well, and didn't you live in the apartment with me? Oh no, that was Bauer. Never mind.
And Bill for one
and
day.
Bill. Yeah.
For one weekend. We talked
Bill
about
lived in the cubby.
Bill was the person under the stairs.
It was a joke. We told him that. We said, dude, you can move in, but you got to sleep into this 3-foot high by 6-foot long space under the stairs as a joke. And he did it. So we just let him do it.
He thinks it's real to this day.
Brian and I are just laughing our ass off. He actually sleeping down there.
And that's the kind of guys you guys were.
Yeah,
and that's kind
of dicks.
Well, it's a little bit of a product of a bygone era, because I actually.
Well, you Bellingham kids were so soft, man. We just had to try and toughen you up.
I know it's true, but like the idea that instead of ever saying, "Oh no, dude, it's a joke," you could sleep in that room. It's more like, "Oh, he's going for it, so we'll just see how this plays out."
Sure.
All the way through him moving out and going home. Which is awful, but it still speaks to it definitely is a little bit different point of view, and so many people came from so many different places, everyone with a little bit different vibe and a little bit different point of view. It all kind of mashes together and makes it makes for some fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've already got you into high school.
Yeah.
I usually try to fish around for some good dirt, some junior high dirt, some good even.
Well, we never get to one point, though. I did move to Spokane.
Oh.
And then that's when I got into actually being in bands.
How old were you?
16.
16, and you'd already been going out to shows at Guerrilla Gardens.
Oh, yeah, all over. I mean, you name Mountaineers. Like, I had already seen so many bands.
And you could get into stuff. It was all ages.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
No,
this was back before Teen Dance.
Before Teen Dance Ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay. So, why do you move to Spokane?
Because I wanted to finish high school, and I couldn't go back to any of the schools here.
You've been kicked out of everything.
Yeah. So it was like, well...
do you remember what you did to get kicked out of your last chance in Seattle?
I do. Actually, I was just talking to somebody about it just the other day.
Are you going to talk to everybody about it?
Well, I'll tell it because it's pretty funny.
Okay.
Well, it was actually, they had a joint interview, me and my buddy. We both basically been kicked out of everywhere. And they brought us in together. I don't remember exactly why they did that. We're sitting in the principal's office at the very last school, and it was actually back to Ingram. I had already bounced to Roosevelt, to Nathan Hale, John Marshall Alternative, and had screwed up at all of them. So the last chance was to go back to Ingram and see because I hadn't been there for like a year at that point. And we go in, we're sitting there, and it's like, oh, why have you kids changed? Why should we let you back in here? And it's like, oh, I really want to finish school. I mean, seriously, I'm a fairly smart guy. I want to do this. And he got up and left, and there was a stack of bus passes sitting on the desk. And I just reached over and just grabbed the whole stack, stuck them in my pocket. He comes back in, just looks right down at the desk and says, nope, sorry. He knew.
It was a test.
They
put the passes out to see if you
I'm guessing he set it up, and I fell for it. So I gave him the passes back. And I always think, I've always thought, I was like, fuck, man, if I'd only taken like 4 or 5 of them and just left the whole big stack there, I probably would have never had to move to fucking Spokane.
Well, you learned an important lesson that day.
Yes, don't be greedy.
You can shear a sheep many times.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. But you could sell these bus passes. I mean, there was value.
Oh, sure.
To a month-long bus pass. So
yeah, well, including riding the bus if you don't have one.
Right.
But yeah, you can sell them to other people too.
So yeah, that was that.
Okay, so then it's like, well, I guess I have to go to a different city now.
And then I got over there, and they didn't want to let me into any of their high schools. So
based on prior records,
right? So it turns out my mom had gone to school with the guy who was the principal at the alternative school there. They were actually they didn't want me to come in the beginning, and she went in and she said, "Well, I know this guy. We went to high school together." She went in. Bob Schur was his name. And he's dead now. But she goes in and they hit it off. Like, oh, Lou, how you doing? Oh, Bob. Da, 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 da. Okay, your son can come in.
It's all who you know.
I was a good student.
Oh, so you cleaned up your act a little bit.
I was still a scumbag, but at school, I buckled down.
You learned. So you just kind of learned there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
And you learn to take a couple of the passes rather than the whole stack.
Right.
And that's excellent. Okay, so that gets you through to graduation. When did you graduate from high school?
1985.
85. Okay.
And I was in bands at this point.
You were already in bands. Were you always singing?
Yeah.
Okay, you played bass at some point.
Oh, I played bass for a short time in a little skate punk band, some skater kids.
Back then?
Yeah.
And then how did you have a bass? Did you just pick it up to learn because that's what they needed?
I don't recall. I mean, I can play sorta. I can, anybody can strum along to something.
Yeah.
Like taught John Pettibone how to play bass. Come on. Anything's possible.
Yeah, no, and that's the only thing I ever did. It's you've seen what I can do. Anybody can do.
We were
whatever.
in a band together. You played bass.
Exactly, but no, I think it's interesting. Like at some point, you just said, okay, you went from being a listener to a participant.
Well, the singer, there was this band. There were these kids that I met over there in the alternative school, and they were fucking horrible. And their singer was, he wanted to. No one over there was into the real metal. They were all still listening to, fucking Rat and,
Rat keeps coming up on this podcast.
All this shit.
And Def Leppard.
And so I'm just cramming all these bands down their throats. Like, no, that's lame, man. We can't listen to that. We got to listen to this. You got to listen to Slayer. We got to listen to Celtic Frost, everything. And, I convinced these guys in this band, like, we need to start doing different shit. Stop doing Judas Priest covers and let's start doing Slayer covers. And by the way, kick that fucking singer out because he's horrible. And he had this high-pitched, Halfordish voice. And I always sang along. I've always been like the loud, headbanging metalhead guy at the party, with the boombox. And they were like, well, dude, you got a good voice. Why don't you just do, you come in, you do it. And I was like, yeah, that's it. That's what I'm going to do.
And what was that band?
Disgrace.
Yes. No recording?
We had a demo. I don't know whatever happened to it. I'm still in contact with all the dudes, but no one has it.
Recorded like at home on a 4-track or
on a 4-track?
On a 4-track. So there's a Disgrace demo with you.
I have the cover.
And it's metal.
I have the cassette cover still. I have plenty of flyers.
I can't believe I've never heard that. You've never wanted to seek that out.
Well, I was in no, but we got lucky, man, because there was nobody else in Spokane that was heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, there were like punk bands, but they weren't heavy. And so we'd go to every show and, talk to everybody and hang out. And then like DRI would come to town and the promoter would be like, well, fuck, I have nobody to open for the show. Oh, I'll get those kids. And so like almost immediately we were playing like the big shows. We were playing with COC and DRI, Beyond Possession, Die Krautzen. I mean, we were having a good time. Things progressed quick. And, except for the band didn't. We broke up and became another band, Rather Grim, which you've heard that. I've played that for you before.
I believe so. So you went from Disgrace to Rather Grim.
Yeah.
Metal bands. Okay.
Yeah.
Were they not?
Well, yeah, you're right. They were. I mean, we thought we were getting more punk or hardcore or whatever. But then, then I was like, fuck this. All right. All I listen to now is Agnostic Front and the fucking Cro-Mags and, hardcore. I love Youth of Today. Like, I'm going hardcore.
Okay.
So I jumped ahead a lot there, but.
No, that's good, though. That's good. So you're listening to all this metal. At some point, would you say that you got into hardcore after high school?
No.
No, in high school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what was the first thing you heard that wasn't metal that you were like, hell yes, this is something I love? This.
Well, I had a buddy who was a tape trader, and I mean, he would tack on stuff at the end of tapes. I'd be like, oh, give me the Exodus demo, and then he'd tack stuff on. And a lot of times he wouldn't write anything, but I remember the first couple of things that really stuck out in my mind were a band called NYC Mayhem, and Youth of Today, and SSD, actually. And NYC Mayhem then became Straight Ahead. And it was like, oh, this metal band that I love, now they're straight edge. And I was becoming aware of what straight edge was at the time.
Yeah.
I still, when I first got Minor Threat, I thought it was like a comedy record. I thought it was Dead Milkmen or some shit.
Right.
A joke.
Crucial Youth.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this is funny. I don't drink, don't smoke. Like, haha, these punk rockers.
Oh,
they're
a lot of
funny.
No, and I remember a metal guy up in Bellingham, we were talking about Minor Threat, and he was like, I want to like them, but I just can't get with what they're about. I remember thinking, really? Like, is it an offensive message, really? But and he was a pretty cool dude, but he was just like, yeah, no, I'm not into it, man.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was, well, okay, I didn't hear Minor Threat until after I heard 7 Seconds. So I'd already heard, like, the Message music, and I was already like, this is incredible. And then I heard Minor Threat. Like, and in my mind, it's like there's this huge gap between the two, but everything happens so quickly back then. You just think there was a long period of time between it. It's probably a couple weeks.
Well, yeah, I think about that actually a lot. Like in the gap from Boston to like Youth Crew.
Yeah,
I mean that really was only 4 or 5 years.
Right,
in 82 to 85. Youth of Today were playing shows in 1985.
Those changes don't happen like that now. They're like there's the huge gaps of Well, I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know because I don't know what the kids are doing. If the kids are doing anything.
Kids these days. I swear to God, man, I try so hard to not be a part, but to just steer them in certain directions. Like, listen to this, and they don't fucking care at all. Like, I was just thinking about that actually earlier today. When I was trying to convince these kids, you need to do a zine, man. You got to do a zine. You hold it in your hands. You got to pass it around to people. And it was just like, who the fuck are you, stupid old man? What is this?
So you're like a dude who's trying to tell this kid if he whipped his car, it would go faster. That's what we used to do with the horses.
I like it.
and I'm saying this as someone who wishes these kids would make some zines, Okay, but it's partly them, it's partly us.
Oh, certainly. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I just at this point, I hope they put on a good show. I always try. It's like you should try and get these other, get somebody else on the bill. They always still put the same shitty bands on the bills and.
Yeah, well, yeah. What are you gonna do? And these people you're talking about are over in
currently in Spokane. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome that you're that involved.
Well, it's either that or just be bored to tears every day. So I don't know. There's a big group of people. I moved over there a year and a half ago.
You moved back over. Spokane.
And yeah, met a pretty good solid group of people who, again, they're all doers, all in bands, they're all putting on shows.
And some connections with people that you knew from before.
Yeah, that and people who just knew of me, I should say. I mean, it sounds kind of, conceited or whatever, but
you're someone
I have a reputation.
You're someone that people know.
So even it was easy to jump in and just be like, fuck it, I'm going to start booking shows. Like, sure, cool. You know what you're doing. Here's a date,
Right on. Okay, let's go back in time again. We'll get up into that future stuff here in a little bit. So we basically have you getting out of high school. You're out in metal bands. You're still in Spokane.
Yep. Still in Spokane.
Do you start another band over there, or do you come back to Seattle?
Start a band over there. I was like, this is it. Got to be in a hardcore band now, man. Because that's all. I'd spent so long just fully immersed in hardcore, getting so into it.
Right.
And I was like, fuck it. This band's done. I'm going to find some new guys. We're going to start a hardcore band.
And you've graduated?
I'm shaving my head. I'm cutting my hair. I'm going all,
Now, you've graduated?
At that point, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you were looking for a school to graduate from. You accomplish this goal. You keep it together enough to graduate from this one school. You don't get kicked out again. Anything significant you remember about graduating, or that feeling or idea of where you were going to go from there?
Yeah, I started selling newspaper subscriptions for $3.35. Then I started working as a janitor for $3.35 minimum wage. And my plan was, well, like I said, I had been having success with the bands I was in. So I knew I had a good thing going. And like I said, I wanted to get, something heavier happening. And at this point, I started meeting Greg, and Nate. And
so you met Greg Anderson over there?
Yeah.
And Nate Mendel?
Yeah. Daily Squat would come up and play. False Liberty would come over and play. So we started to become friends. So
no, Greg was in Seattle, but False Liberty was coming over and playing in Spokane.
Correct.
And False Liberty is Greg and Vic?
Greg and Vic.
Who ended up being a brotherhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Nate. There was one show, famously this one show was Hateful Youth. That's the band I started. That was my hardcore band. Hateful Youth.
Hateful Youth. And okay, so I guess what I was saying was when you got out of high school, you didn't have a goal like, I'm going to work a year and go to college, or I'm going to go into this career. I wanted to get an idea of where your head was.
Yeah, I wanted to join the army. I swear to God.
Was that the goal?
Yeah, I wanted to join the army. I want to learn how to fly helicopters or something cool like that. And they wouldn't take me.
They wouldn't take you?
No, I went through all the tests and everything, and they're like, oh, you scored great. We're going to blah, blah, blah. Take the pick of what you want to do. Oh, now we're going to take a look at your criminal record.
You are kidding me.
And yeah, at that time, I had some, I had some pretty major stuff on there. No violent crime, but,
Okay, so no violent crime. It was all just,
but felonies and shit. And,
but you're not 18 when you committed them.
Didn't matter. I swear to God, they were...
The thing that I find funny about that, and I'm wondering if it was just a slice of time in our history where that was the case. Because it seemed like, didn't they used to give people the option to go into the military rather than pay off the crime that they committed?
I'm guessing if there would have been a war at the time, they would have been like, come on in, buddy.
Right.
But,
this was just Cold War shit.
Peace. So at that point, I was just like, oh, screw that then. I'm gonna be a punk rocker, man. I'm gonna be that's what I'm gonna be. And I didn't really have
never knew that about you.
Another goal except to be in a band and play shows. And then
had that been a goal, the military, had that been a goal of yours for a long time?
Yeah, since I was a kid, young kid.
Wow. And so did kind of like the rug being pulled out from
full blown? Yeah. And then I got another plan later, but that was later. That was after I moved back to Seattle. I had another goal.
Right.
And that same thing. And that was another time I was just like, well,
and at that same, so that second,
be a punk rocker.
That second one was also because of the criminal history?
No, that was a physical thing.
Okay. So I guess I'm saying, like, what kind of turnaround from that did you have? What was, I'm going to be a punk rocker, like a just 2-finger salute, just like, fuck you all. I'm not following your system anymore.
I'm just going to party. I'm going to fucking be as pissed off as I can. All I want to do is get on stage and scream at people.
Right. It's pretty nihilistic.
Jump high and, get drunk. That was it.
Okay. Now I think that's a pretty good, I've known you for many, many years, and I've learned a lot about you in this last, few minutes.
I was probably too embarrassed to tell you all this stuff back then.
That's why I like this. I love coming back from this distance of a great number of years and being able to say, hey, what was that deal with you? Because I
was a fuck up.
Well, that seems to be, we seem to be a collective of fuck ups to some degree, and a lot of us turned out all right.
Yeah.
Most everybody, so, okay. And there's probably people that are going, yeah, you may think so.
Yeah, come on, I got a good job now. I work for the government.
That's right. Okay, so you're out of high school. You've met Greg. You've met Nate. You start Hateful Youth.
Yep. And just like the other two bands I'd been in, immediately we get all the good shows. We're playing every weekend. We're able to do everything. We're having a great time.
Who were awesome. The other guys in the band?
A guy named Sean Wilson, who's passed now. A guy named Alf Presbo, who I still hang out with all the time. He still lives in Spokane. Just was at his house last weekend. And a guy named Lou Boucher played guitar, and he's kind of just dropped off the face of the planet.
Like he's an adult now with a life.
Yeah, no one knows. No
one
one's
knows?
seen him for forever. But the whole crew, the Hateful Youth crew, I still hang out with like 90% of them. They're all, we're all dudes in our 40s and shit. But like Exodus came to Spokane, like, I don't know, sometime in December. And like the whole Hateful Youth crew was there. We were all there.
Now you're talking about the guys from the band and the people that came out and supported you.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Bunch of old gray-haired old men.
So why does that come to an end?
It doesn't, obviously.
No,
the band.
The band.
Oh, it was such a spur of the moment thing. I was just kind of, me and one of the guys in the band are always kind of argued. Still an awesome guy, and we were still friends for years later, but we just kind of, it was one of those, who's in charge, basically. And some really good friends of mine, Mike and Eric Dietzel, they were coming over for some show. They were coming over from Spokane to Seattle for some show. And at the time, I probably didn't have a job because jobs were really, hard to get. And if you got them, it was minimum wage, $3.35. And maybe I was missing Seattle. I don't know. But it was just, they were like, well, we're going to Seattle tomorrow. And I was like, I'm going to pack a bag. I'm gone. And that was it, man. I packed up and left that day.
One day decision to move. Take a bag of stuff, and you have
moved back to Seattle, and I'd been gone 3 years at this point.
Okay, and you're not getting away from an ex-girlfriend or from a something going down.
It was just like,
and the band had crumbled at that point. Or?
No. They were still totally active. We just recorded a demo.
That's okay.
I was like, man, what? I mean, I miss Seattle. This is where I grew up.
No, I got it. I just stuff like this I find kind of fascinating. So you've got something that's happening. You've just recorded a demo. How long after you recorded the demo did you go?
I couldn't tell you exactly, but it had to have been within months.
So it wasn't like you worked on like the biggest project the band had ever worked on, and then you kind of had that like post-project depression.
Like I said, Mike and Eric were like, well, dude, we're going over. I don't even remember what the show was. I'm sure I was planning, I'm going to the show with you guys.
Is this 87?
This would have been 87.
87? Okay.
Yeah. And just came over. My sister was living right out here by Northgate, and I just, I don't remember if I called her in advance.
Maybe it was,
or just showed up at her house.
Circle Jerks 7 Seconds at the Community World Theater in Tacoma.
It could have very well been. Seriously, it could have been 7 Seconds in Metal Church in Olympia. I mean, RKL, who knows, man? I mean, there was, it could have been anything. Could have been The Accused. I mean, those are all possibilities.
It would have made sense.
So, actually, that would have made more sense because The Accused were the biggest thing in our lives.
Or the Dehumanizers.
Time. Or the Dehumanizers, yeah.
I don't think anyone remembers the Dehumanizers.
I heard they're playing shows. I know they just released like a discography.
I know people do. Like people that I know. That from back then, from high school. In high school, Dehumanizers were a big deal. That whole Kill Lugezo thing and all that.
Sure. And
we go see them play in Bellingham. That was some of the earliest punk shows ever. First, maybe not the first mosh pit that I was in, but second or third, I think was probably Dehumanizers and the best. But yeah, I think that that's a band that should get on Rainfest. Just for some.
The Accused should. I think that'd be great.
Oh hell yeah, that too. Okay. So that gets you over to Seattle. That's the key point, I guess. I just, I don't want to do it quick. I want to figure out why.
Well, yeah, move back and just immediately start hanging out with all my high school buddies. But at this point, they were all still full-blown metalheads, and I made a choice. I was doing something different.
You had cut your hair.
Yeah, I had a shaved head.
Did you have long hair? Were you a long hair metal guy? So you went from long hair to shaved head. I'm a skinhead.
Yep. I was going out with the hottest metal chick in the school. She dumped me immediately.
This is the kind of stuff I'm looking for, dude.
Yeah, so,
you cut your hair and your hot girlfriend dumped you.
Yep.
Wow. And
went over to pick her up.
And she said it's the hair.
She just said, I don't recall exactly what she said, but I went to pick her up, and she was like, this ain't what I signed up for, buddy.
Wow.
So I guess that was another crazy spur of the moment, it's decision. It's
and when we say skinhead, look,
shaving my head.
We're talking like we understand, but like there's maybe going to be people listening to this who are just going to automatically assume skinhead means you got like a swastika tattoo on your forehead and we're goose stepping around. Like,
no, it was the agnostic front version,
right?
Unity.
Right. Just so there's within the whole world of skinheads, there's a tiny little sliver that's actually Nazi racist skinheads, and everything else is just.
And I'm sure we'll get to them later.
Oh, sure, we absolutely can. But I just I try to pause and remember that this isn't just while this is a conversation you and I are having, I'm really hoping some people are going to listen to this that wouldn't know what we were talking about, and that they would hear skinhead and go, "What?" So, okay, dumped. Now you're a skinhead. Now you're back in Seattle with your old friends. And the Dietzels, are they living in?
They're still in. They're still in Spokane. But I started hanging out with Greg a lot at that point.
Greg Anderson.
Also. Yeah, Greg Anderson. Okay. And False Liberty had. I don't know if False Liberty were still together. I think it was the tail end of False Liberty, and Greg was actually 3 years younger than me. So if I was 19, he would have been 16.
Okay.
But we had been friends and tape traders. So, we'd hang out, fucking go to the movies and shit, go record store, go shop for records, go eat, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was kind of just a crew of two sort of at that time.
And he was straight edge?
He was straight edge at the time.
False Liberty, he was straight edge when he was in that band.
I don't think he called himself straight edge. He was kind of like you back then, positive, sober, but didn't really have that label yet. And I was still, at this point, a total lush.
Sure.
Just fucking up all the time. But yeah, so we just started hanging out and things just,
And they came together. And now
the scene.
He starts doing Brotherhood.
Actually, he starts doing Inner Strength.
Oh, Inner Strength.
He starts Inner Strength.
Okay.
And he's singing Inner Strength. And there was actually a Spokane guy who had moved over, was in that band, this guy Jeff Jackson. And so it was, we're all friends and shit. And he got a guitar and he's like, oh, I want to be in a full-blown straight edge band, the real deal. I'm going to play guitar and I'm writing songs. And I remember we'd be sitting at his mom's house and he'd be like, playing these riffs. And I was like, oh yeah, that's fucking killer. Now let's drive down to Community World Theater so I can get drunk and see Subvert and you can drive me home. Like, all right. But then he eventually broke up Inner Strength and started Brotherhood.
Okay, so Inner Strength is in between False Liberty and Brotherhood. Okay, and I don't think I knew that, or I've just forgotten. It's been a long time. Remember False Liberty, there were guys in Bellingham who would talk about that band, and then we just never had an opportunity. I never had an opportunity to see them. And
they were great, man.
I feel like I missed out. And then, but I couldn't drive yet up in Bellingham, young. Which is Bellingham's 90 miles from Seattle, so you might as well have been, half the country away if you couldn't get anywhere. So then I hear about through the guys that ended up being in the band First Step. I start hearing about Brotherhood, and the first time I heard Brotherhood, it was, I believe, recordings with John White.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys, I don't even think they were doing a straight edge band yet. They had been in a band called the Lawnmowers. And then they became Filthy McNasty, which was the total, like, that band I saw play, like, multiple parties and shows. And it was funny because they ended up having this internal strife where two members went straight edge, Jason and Brett, and the other guys were not into it. Totally cool guys who I think are just awesome to this day, right? But just we're not down. And so that band broke up. We were still in high school. They started First Step. They reformed. And they became a straight edge band, very much inspired by what was going on with Brotherhood. And somewhere in that period of time, Brotherhood went from being the Brotherhood with John singing to you coming on board and being in the band.
Me and Nate both, like, pretty much right at the same time.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was a Brotherhood prior to Nate playing.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Ken Hagel, you know Ken.
Oh, I've never understood Ken's role in Brotherhood. I knew
he played bass.
Like. So it was Ken, John White, Vic, and Greg, and that was that first recording.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, I didn't really like that version of Brotherhood very much. I liked Greg and Vic. John and I did not get along very well for the first quite a few years that we knew each other. We are now very, very good friends.
Yeah, John is awesome, and I never had an opportunity to meet him back then. My first awareness with John was through his zine.
As was mine.
Right. Okay. Oh, okay. So you didn't.
He moved here from Connecticut, and one day Greg and I were at Fallout, and there's this straight edge zine, obviously straight edge zine. I wasn't straight edge at the time, but I was, in the scene. I was part of the scene. But
Right.
I just wasn't, I was still drinking. And like, I remember grabbing it and it's like, dude, that's a Seattle address in here. I was like, what in the fuck? We actually drove to the U District, to this guy's house.
Oh, dude,
Knocked on his apartment door. I was like, what's up?
So this is a key point. This is really good. Back then, I would say up until 89, 90 maybe, things really started to blow up. But if you were aware that there was something that was supposed to be in your orbit and you didn't know who those people were,
right,
and you had an address, you might drive there and knock on the door, which you did, right?
Yeah, we just went to Cave and Kelly Walred, went to their apartment.
I have a story about you with that. I actually have two.
Well, I know one of them.
Which one is it?
Well, some things I don't want to talk about.
No. It'll be good. No, you did a little bit later in life. You did a zine called "Bringing It Back."
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna. This is the other story. Good. Okay.
I wasn't involved in. Wow, this is gonna sound like you got some really shady stuff going on.
Oh, I know. I like it. I like it. Well, some of it is. There are still people alive. There's still people alive. There's still people in the scene who would be pretty pissed off. And I happen to be acquaintances with these people at this time, and I have things I don't want them to know that I did.
Okay, that's fine.
Leave it at that. The big mystery.
So you put your top 10 Northwest things in an issue of Bringing It Back.
I was gonna bring I was gonna bring all my zines today too, just for the fuck of it. And I wish I had. So
and the number one thing you put in there was a band called Crumble.
Yeah, Crumble.
Which did not exist.
It's one of my favorite things in the world to do. Make up fake bands.
And so when we got hold of that up in Bellingham, and now we've jumped ahead, so we'll move back in a minute to where we were. But when we got a hold of that, we knew 2 through 10, but we didn't know what the hell number 1 was. And I think we were pretty relentless with you being like, what's Crumble? What's Crumble? And I think you were trying to I got the tape around here. So you haven't heard him yet?
Oh, I'm sure I played it as far as I could.
there just wasn't.
That was another Brian Bauer and me joke.
Was Crumble?
Yeah.
Well, Bill and I couldn't stand for it, so we just started a band called Crumble.
Perfect.
We just decided that if there was gonna be one, so we did Crumble for a while.
And that's the way it's supposed to work.
With Briar Herrick and Mike Mitchell, and then we became Die Syndrome or whatever.
Oh wait, I thought that was the drum machine band.
No, it was. That's the same. So what ended up happening was Bill was hanging out with Briar, and Briar's always been good with that stuff. In fact, Briar is the same guy that makes the music that leads in this podcast and goes out with it. It's called Polymorph now, but Briar, he went out there and they just put together that song, that Not Me song.
Oh, it's heavy.
Dude, I really love it. So we ended up doing that. We put a band together to play that, and I went and bought a bass and wrote another 6 songs and played a couple shows. It was fun, but originally we were Crumble until we all just kind of went, we hate that name. I thought it was going to be the coolest thing ever that we had retroactively put ourselves as number 1 on your list,
Oh yeah.
Okay, so at some point you go from being the drunk guy that Greg Anderson is giving the ride down to Community World Theater to see Subvert so you can drink, to being the straight edge singer of Brotherhood.
Yeah. And almost overnight.
And once again, we've thrown this term out a lot, and I've never really stopped to explain it. For the non-insider listeners that we might have. Straight edge is an ideology, no drinking, no drugs. Basically, it's a song from Minor Threat that Ian MacKaye wrote in 1981 or way back in the early 80s. And it spawned a movement that goes on strong to this day. I'm still into it. Well, I think even a lot of people that aren't actually still straight edge are still into it. But I am still straight edge, and most of my friends who were straight edge throughout my life are not. And that's fine. It used to be back in the day a really big problem when someone would sell out. There was always there were issues, it would cause a lot of hard feelings.
Oh yeah.
Sell
out. Whew, that was heavy. Heavy duty.
When Ron mentioned earlier, Greg was like you. He didn't do anything, but he was just drug free. That's not actually exactly what I was, because I did drink prior to being straight. There was a day when I went, I'm going to stop doing this now because I'm going to be straight edge. And it was actually the day that I opened up the skateboard shop in Bellingham, Aggression Skates, which was August 15th, 1987. So that's my straight edge day. That's the date. And prior to that, I did drink. I didn't really do drugs, but that was, there are a lot of people who were like, that's just kind of how they lived anyway. So it made sense to just adopt the term, be straight edge, and it wasn't really like a lifestyle change.
Sure.
And that's fine too. I think Greg and I talked about this a little bit. There's a day though when you say I'm straight edge, and that's the day that you're straight edge, because you've decided, right? You can't have just always been straight edge.
No, I don't remember the exact date. I'm sorry,
but something must have happened. Like,
yeah, here's what happened. As I was partying real hard at this point, like drugs, really getting into it, and it was becoming a problem. And everybody I knew was straight edge. Well, 90% of the people I hung around with were straight edge at the time.
Now, were they
to straight edge bands?
Were people becoming straight edge that had prior not, or were you just meeting new straight edge people?
Both.
Okay.
And I remember, Brotherhood was around, and they just opened for Youth Today, and things just went bad between all those guys that were in the band at the time. And a few days later, and I think at this point I probably had like a month of actual sobriety under my belt. I mean, not that much. And I was probably planning to, slip back at some point,
Right.
But I was thinking, this could be something. And I've been a part of this scene for a long time. I'm really getting burned out on partying, on, drinking and doing drugs. And I remember Greg came over to my house one day, and he's like, dude, I'm making some changes, in Brotherhood. I'm like, oh, probably a good idea, from what I've seen, what I've heard. And he goes, here's the deal. It's like, if you totally quit, doing everything, it's like, I want you to sing for the band. And at this point, I was so jonesing to be back into a band. And I knew this band could be so angry, and that's what I thrive on in a band, is just like, I'm being pissed. And they weren't doing that at that time. They were kind of, a little bit more mellow. And I was like, fuck, dude, you're awesome. Let's do it. I'm done. That's it.
And you'd already gotten there in your head. You're like, you'd considered it.
Yeah.
But so this was just the catalyst. This was the thing that's like, oh, yeah, I mean, it's a nice carrot. It's a better carrot, I think, that gets dangled for a lot of straight edge people.
Yeah. So, like I said, almost overnight, it was like, okay, I'm straight edge, and now I'm the singer for this straight edge band, and let's see what happens.
And so how long after you did that did you go record the vocals for the record? Or did you guys go record the Brotherhood of Friends demo?
Well, we had to lose one more member before then. Ken did, I throw around a lot of, blue, language, whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm fucking the kind of guy who does that kind of shit. Mm-hmm. There you go. And Ken did not like that. And he was
I played in a band with Ken years later up in Bellingham. And yes, he was more sensitive to that than a lot of guys I've known. And he's a wonderful person.
Yes.
But I think at the time it wouldn't have gone over. A hardcore band like that with you in it.
He quit. He's like, I can't do this. I don't want to be in a band with this guy. This guy's like, I don't know what he is, but he's just not what I want to be a part of. And so he quit. So we're sitting there, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Right at that exact same time, Nate moved to Seattle. And Nate was coming over here to join Christ on a Crutch.
Right.
It was going to be like 8 or 9 months before Christ on a Crutch could even do anything, because Glenn and Jerry were still in DC. So basically Nate was just here, and we're like, well, I mean, you pretty much don't drink. You're like, why don't you join this band, man? And he's like, well, I'll do it until Christ on a Crutch is happening. It's like, perfect. So at that point, we had a unit together.
Oh yeah.
I mean, quality players,
And he writes in this
songs.
re-release of the Brotherhood stuff that came out. He writes about that time and how he felt being someone who was involved in that, but not really being straight edge.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a combination that would shock people, I think, today that were in the straight edge scene. Yeah. The idea of a straight edge band with a non-straight edge member,
well, I think,
is an old school idea.
Yes, and we've seen, now that we know the history of a lot of these bands, we recognize that was the case for a lot of them.
Yes, and when I first heard, the first time I ever heard someone say the word straight edge, I heard this older skateboarder in Bellingham that I knew, sitting drunk in a parking lot, like with another dude, and we kind of skated over to him, and we're just like, we didn't really know these guys, but we thought they were cool. And then one guy was just like really bummed out, and he says to his friend, he goes, "Man, I think I'm gonna go straight edge for a couple weeks." And that was my first hearing another person say the word, and that was I was like, oh, okay, that's what it is. And then that's what it is. You just you can stop, you can use it to reset yourself. And then I read an interview with The Faction, Steve Caballero's punk band,
sure,
and they were saying that they were straight edge in like a Thrasher magazine or some zine, some interview they did, and the person doing the interview said, "No, you guys smoke cigarettes," and they're like, "Yeah, but the cigarettes don't get you high. Like, we don't do we don't drink. We drink Coca-Cola, but yeah, so we're straight edge because we don't get high." And I remember thinking, "Oh, that's what straight edge is." Like, there were a lot of different ways that it was, and without the internet, and without, in Bellingham, we didn't even have Fallout Records or anything like that. We weren't even getting many zines. I'm getting my information from Thrasher magazine. There's not even a way to get Max from Rock and Roll regularly. So there was a lot of. It seemed it was much more difficult. It was a few years later where it was kind of became this hard and fast understanding of the rules of straight edge.
Yeah. I feel sort of bad about laying some of those rules down, at least around here.
No, you can't.
Rule book. Although that was a joke, but no one took it as a joke except for.
It's not a set of rules. It's the motherfucking law.
There you go.
Isn't that what it said on the cover?
It said on the cover, yeah.
I have one around here somewhere.
Oh, man. I haven't seen one in forever.
If I could...
One of the few zines that I don't have.
If I can remember what box it's in, I will just put my hands on it. But, all right. So that's... So you become straight edge. Now you're in Brotherhood. You guys... Oh, you have the changes.
Yeah, we start rewriting all the songs. We ditched 90% of the lyrics. Kept only the lyrics that Greg had written, rewrote a bunch of lyrics that I was like, man, I can't sing that. That's cheesy. But
you kept some questionable ones, like "Put Your Pants On," and I believe at one point you sing "Buy Yourself a Gerbil and Get a Job."
Buy yourself a gerbil and get a job. Sure. Well, it's profound.
Okay, I'm gonna step. We're doing a lot of the stepping aside, but Mark Holcomb from Undertow one time told me. Ron sings. I love that song where he goes, "Put your pants on," and then he said so. And it was, I think Murph was with him, and he said, "No, listen to this. We're gonna go listen to the record. I swear to God." He says, "Buy yourself a gerbil and get a job."
Buy yourself a gerbil and get a job.
And that's in the song "Gain." I believe,
that's
right?
Get Involved.
Is it Get Involved?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Get involved.
So I just remember that we were having so much fun laughing about that we played it in front of you and said, "What do you say?" right there, and you looked at it, you kind of nodded, you said, "It sounds like I said, buy myself a gerbil and get a job." Buy yourself a gerbil and get a job. So I love that. Clearly, obviously, it's not what you're saying, but that's not what you mean when you say you had silly lyrics. You were just revamping the songs to.
Well, no. They were just, I had been writing lyrics for a while at that point, so I knew what I was comfortable, saying, and I knew what would sound cool the way I sang it. And a lot of the lyrics were written for, different type of singing, basically. And so, words had to get cut and things had to be added to, deal with how long I was going to scream for or whatever. And, so then we probably, I don't know, I guess it was maybe 8 months or so later. And I was like, well, let's go record. And I don't know. I'm always shocked at how great it came out.
It was just one of those things, for me, that style of hardcore, I wasn't there yet. Like I was a much more of a skateboarder, listening to The Faction, listening to 7 Seconds, and so sometimes when I'd hear harder stuff like that, I liked the Chrome Eggs, like from Jump, right? Like that was, the Chrome Eggs were something that you could kind of get with, you could kind of get it. But there was a lot of other stuff like I didn't get Agnostic Front, like back then. And Brotherhood, I will credit Brotherhood for being a band that made me go, from when I first heard it, it was such a grating kind of oh, this isn't really the stuff I listen to being like, oh no, I really love this because I'm connected to it, because it's part of something I'm part of, that sounds like this now. And that opened up a lot of doors to heavier music and I guess more abrasive vocals and things like that. But yeah, it does still hold up to this day. So you guys record those songs, you put them out as a demo?
Actually, I think the first thing we did was Pusshead contacted us and was putting together the new skate rock, and
that's the very first thing.
Yeah, well, that was the first. I think that was the first thing that we sent it out to. I mean, the demo might have came out because it takes a while for Thrasher to put out their deal. But I remember he was like, "Do you guys have any recordings?" Or, I don't remember
how did
he knew Greg?
He knew Greg.
Yeah.
Because so just for some history, we're talking 1988.
Yeah.
Pushead's like the biggest thing in the skateboarding world. Like, I mean, at that point, he's already doing Metallica.
Death were like the biggest band. Were they still being? Were they? I don't recall. They were on that comp, so they must have been.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, it's most skateboarders would have known from artwork on like Zorlak skateboards and Metallica stuff.
And he was the music editor at Thrasher, and he had a column, Puss Zone, in Thrasher every week, which is where, for years, I had been learning about all the killer West Coast hardcore bands that I, still to this day love. And so I want to put you on this comp. And there was a bunch of other Northwest bands already on it. So it just worked out perfect. I think Subvert, The Accused. The Accused were on that one. Head First were on it. Mm-hmm. Underdog were on that one. We were on. It was
it's Noise Forest, right?
Yeah.
Is it number 7?
It is. Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, then we did the demo, and then this guy Rich Jacobs had contacted us and said, "Well, I want to do a 7-inch for you." He had he was starting. I can't remember if we were number 1 or number 2 on the release. I think we might have been number 2. So he'd started a label and had
Skate Edge Records.
I think he put out Donuts or no, I can't remember the name of the band, but he decided he said, "Oh, let's do a 7-inch," which back in those days, and still I guess to today, takes forever. So that took forever. So we just kept selling those demos, and then what I consider to be the greatest things that ever happened to us, Greg and I were walking down Broadway one time, probably, I don't know, going to Dick's to get burgers or going to record store shop or something, and we see Blaine and Alex from The Accused, who, we both know very well from previous bands, playing with them and being just huge Accused fans. You gotta understand, they were the biggest thing around here. And I remember they call us over. They were at Dick's. They call us over. They're like, "Oh, guys, what's up? So you guys got a new band?" Like, "Yeah." Like, "We're getting ready to go on tour." "Oh, cool. You guys want to go?" Like, "Oh, holy shit!" Like, I think we just ran back to my apartment, the Caravilla, the famous hardcore hotel. Yep. And it's like, "Oh my God, call Vic, call work. I'm not coming in, sell the house, sell the car, sell the kids. I'm never coming back."
And so I knew you when that happened. And you were in the Caravilla, so we were just beginning to figure out who each other were. Because I came to the Caravilla when you were living there, I think, twice. And
I lived there with Julie Roberts.
Yep.
And Kirsten Hansen.
And
Brian Bauer for a while, and Justin Johnson. And Nate Mendel, and Curtis Pitts, and
Brett Blue.
No, that was a different apartment.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I'm naming all the apartments. Who lived in all the apartments? Chad Robinson, I think, all lived in the apartment directly underneath of us. And then Greg Anderson, Brett Blue, and then eventually Dennis Chang lived in the apartment above us.
Right. Okay. So one of the times
that was hence the Hardcore Hotel, because that's where everyone lived.
In episode 1 of this podcast, Greg's asking, "Did you guys live in the Hardcore Hotel?" Although I don't think and I said it was at the Caravilla. I think he actually means the Bonneville, where we lived years later. That's the second Hardcore hotel. Right. Okay.
A lot of good times in both those apartments, and they were almost directly across the street from each other.
Oh yeah, it was quite the spot. So okay, you guys release that demo. You play a show in Lenny's basement. There's a bunch of pictures. People know these pictures. It's a picture of Brotherhood playing with you jumping and a big Gray Matter poster on the wall in the background. That's what makes it really easily identifiable and pretty iconic. That's a good shot. And there's a couple different shots of that that people have seen or may have seen. I meet you. First Step is super excited about you guys. They've changed. They become the straight edge thing. In Bellingham, Dave Longstreth starts singing. So they're getting it together. We set up a show in a storage unit in Bellingham.
Yeah.
And you guys came up and you brought
Ready to rock.
And you brought a band called Feeding the Cause.
Yeah. Oh, did they come with us?
Feeding the Cause played.
So everyone played but us.
Everyone played but Brotherhood.
It was fucking horrible.
It was 2 Bellingham bands. It was At Odds and First Step, and then Feeding the Cause. There may have been another band. We played. I was in that band At Odds. It was a nightmare, but we played. And then you guys were just about to play, and either the owner showed up or the cops showed up. I don't think it was cops.
I think it was the owner.
And shut it down, and we couldn't find a way to pull it off because that was going to be the. I'd already seen you guys at that, out in at Lenny's.
And that crowd was going apeshit. And
it was a good crowd.
It was packed.
Lots of people from Seattle, and then people from Bellingham. I mean, I'll bet you that if you guys had played, there'd be a couple more notable hardcore personalities from the Northwest that would have been their night.
Probably.
Probably that night changed my life, But it just maybe didn't go quite far enough. And that was it for Brotherhood. For me, those were my encounters with Brotherhood. By the time you guys went on tour,
strange because we played so many more times and we were friends, but I guess you just didn't get rides down to Seattle.
Didn't get rides, or there was one show I didn't get into because it's Skinhead. I didn't have ID, and the Skinhead at the door wouldn't let me in.
Was that at the Underground?
7 Seconds. You guys play with 7 Seconds?
Subvert.
Oh, that must have been that.
It was a Subvert at the Underground.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I got the flyer. I'm pretty sure that's it.
Wait, does it have moshing skinheads on it?
Could. I don't know. It was a common theme.
So yeah, no, and for whatever reason, it never really came together again until Resolution was I able to see you do it. But I remember you were writing letters to, I think it was to Bill. I think you wrote one to Bill. Maybe it was to Jason while you were out with the Accused, and you would at one point you sent. Do you remember this? You were doing you were doing a bunch of various different skinhead tattoo style.
Oh
drawings.
yeah, I was really into. I had
a Mr.
I still
Clean.
Draw those. Yeah, man, I love them. Skull and crossbones, and then these skinhead dudes. They really look similar.
You still draw those to this day?
Yeah, I love them.
And you have one tattooed, don't you?
No, not of my own drawing.
Oh, you did? Because you have some kind of a skinhead, straight edge skinhead.
I got some janky tattoos. I got some good ones as well.
That's fun. It's not. It's not to try to make you look bad, but it's just. I always thought that I'd always assumed that you had drawn one of those tattoos, and that the idea was that maybe some of these other guys would get these tattoos too.
No, that only worked for me once, Dave, and you have one of the tattoos.
Okay. 4 people got an identical tattoo.
And still to this day, I'm kicking myself for telling Pettibone he couldn't do it.
I thought Pettibone was going to do it.
Well, don't you remember? I was like, no, dude, you got to be in the band. We're in the band. Kinder can get one.
So Ron had the idea that himself, myself, the
bowling crew,
Mark Holcomb and Ryan Murphy, we were on a band called Die Down, that we would all get a tattoo, 3 X's and 1 family around our left ankle.
Yes.
1 Family Youth of the Day song.
Yep.
And we all went into, and you said, Larson, I'll pay for it.
What?
You bought my tattoo.
Oh, I thought you said, I said, Larson will pay for it.
No. You said, because I didn't have any tattoos. And it's still the only tattoo I have. And you were like, no, dude, do this. I know, I'll cover you.
Oh.
And
I'm a nice guy.
I'm fucking proud of that tattoo, man.
Me too. I love it, man. Not Edge anymore, but shit. It's awesome.
It identifies a good time.
It does. And that was a great crew, and we had a lot of fun and low expectations, but high rewards.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Okay. And we'll jump back just a little bit. How do you go from Brotherhood to Resolution, and how does Brotherhood end?
Brotherhood ended. We were on tour a couple of months with the Accused and realized that none of us had a clue. None of us had ever been on any kind of big tour before. We were all kids. Vic was the oldest one. I think he was maybe 23. I was 22 probably. Greg would have been 18. And as things will happen, if you're not used to being stuck in a van with people for a long time, you get on everybody's, you start hating each other, and we just started fighting. We started fighting all the time. And then at the same time, also, Greg had become really good friends with a bunch of guys in San Diego. And they said, hey, man, move to San Diego, join our band Amenity. And I think at the time he was, probably as fed up as we all were with each other. And was like, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to San Diego and I'm going to be an Amenity. And that's what he did.
And that was the thing that broke Brotherhood up.
Yeah. And then Vic and I, being knuckleheads, we were like, well, let's keep it going. So we had a couple of other dudes come in, the guys from Feeding the Cause. And we played, I think, 2 shows. And that just wasn't happening.
Oh, I didn't know that ever happened. Brotherhood without Greg.
Yeah, we played. Well, maybe we only played 1 show. I know we played Spokane, but that might have been it. Well, because we play Spokane all the time. So yeah, after that, it was like, yeah, Vic, this ain't working. Let's scrap it. And then really quickly, right after that, I think Brian Bauer had become friends with Dan. They were both working at University of Washington, and they were like, we're going to start a band.
So Brian Bauer was going to start a band with this fella, Dan.
Two Spokane dudes, Dan and Brian Kraft.
And Brian Kraft. Now, when you're introduced to Dan, what was his name?
Well, he had 2 last names, Shannon Horner. He had a hyphenated name.
Okay.
Now it's just Dan Horner.
It's Dan Horner?
Yeah.
Okay. And it was never Dan Shannon.
Not that I recall. Okay. I always called him Shannon Horner.
Shannon Horner, right? And I think the confusion came in where other people didn't know how to say his name or didn't know hyphenated names. What's this newness?
Right. Yeah.
So
we're progressive. If you were progressive, you would have taken the lady's last name. I told that to our old boss, Chris List. Remember? She was we're getting married and we're changing our name to Chris List Root. I was like, well. And she said, because we're progressive. And I said, if you're really progressive, he'd take your last name, lady.
Nice. I liked the idea of a melding of the 2 names rather than a hyphenate. So with Rocky Vodolato, he married April Gilbert. And so I told them they needed to either change their collective last name to Vodolilbert or Gilbolato.
I like it.
And they didn't go for it. But you can't do it with that Vodolato last name. That's a good last name. So no, I agree. I like that whole last name thing. It's an ancient concept.
I hate seeing them on jerseys and they never fit. And it's like, oh, come on, dude. What are you gonna do when now you're gonna get married? She's gonna have a hyphen. How many last names your kid are gonna end up having?
Trifinite.
Well, wouldn't it be quadfinite?
I don't know. Oh, if it's 2 hyphenates again.
Yeah. See? It's just
that's how you get the dude in
On to Infinity.
That's how you get the bad guy, like the rat from like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right? He's got all his names. Maybe that's why the olden time guys from big families had 12 names.
Well, and speaking of Dan, though, going back.
Oh, no, I'm not. I didn't bring that up to make fun of him, but I was confused as to his name. He's gone on to be someone people know. He's in Sunny Day Real Estate.
Yeah, one of the bigger, pop punk bands ever, I guess. Probably started the whole trend, or a big part of it. He's back in Spokane now, or I guess he's always been there, but he's back doing stuff. He owns a club over there now. I run into him.
Yeah, and what's a club?
It's called the Big Dipper.
The Big Dipper? He's putting on shows there?
Yep.
Oh, very cool.
Yep. Puts on a lot of stuff there. I put on some shows there. Him and his wife own it, and he hasn't changed at all.
Yeah? Same dude?
Exactly the same.
Right on. So you guys start Resolution, and we book a show in Bellingham.
Boy, that show was huge.
And it happened. It wasn't... Do you remember it as being huge?
To me, it seemed like it was like there was 400 people there.
Wow, yeah. Not at all.
Huh.
But it was good, though. And you guys were the draw. So
it was on the second floor. Wasn't it on the second floor of some...
God, Bill and I argued about this. It was a place called The Aftermath. Now, here's the thing about that show that's awesome is that's also where I meet Matt Matsuoka from 1007. So this is where all this stuff kind of came together in one big smash up at that show. And if it weren't for all of us going over after the show to Marie Coach's house. Now, you remember this?
I don't recall that, but I remember hanging out at Marie's house many times.
Right. Okay. So
that's exact.
And I think you were doing Overkill already. Does that sound right?
Yes. I started Overkill when Brotherhood was still happening.
When Brotherhood was still happening and doing shows at the Party Hall?
Yes.
Okay, we probably should get more into that.
No, I don't think I did shows at the Party Hall when Brotherhood was happening. That happened after. Boy, I don't know. It's only a year or It's all happens right around 90, 91.
Yep, 1991, everything. So this show at Aftermath Hall, I believe, was 1990. And I actually have a ticket for it somewhere that I held on to forever. It was in my wallet forever. I tried to show it to Bill on his episode, but I couldn't get a hold of it. So all these different bands played that show, and part of the thing that was cool about it is we pulled so many different bands from different scenes, or different groups of people, that a bunch of people came in and were at that show that wouldn't have necessarily known about Brotherhood or known that this was your new band. And so yeah, that's why it seemed like it was probably bigger than most of the stuff we did.
Yeah, I recall it as being huge. It was wide, but that's.
I think being involved with putting on the show, it just wasn't big enough. Probably,
It was a lot of fun.
It was fun. It was
a lot of great pictures from it.
Good pictures from it, and we ended up becoming. I think that it's right about that time where we become actual, like, okay, I've been around you enough times. Like, hey, we're gonna come down to Seattle. We want to hang out, and you're like, come hang out with me.
Sure, yeah.
So that's happening now. We all ended up hanging out at Marie's house, and that was another part of it too. It wasn't just like we were seeing each other at shows. Like I don't even know how that happened, but it wasn't just you guys. It was like it felt like everybody from the show almost, because like Matt Matsuoka ends up there too.
Well, because her dad was always out of town, wasn't he?
He was working. Yeah, he was an executive.
And I remember this for quite a while on. Like, I'd hang out at their house all the time and never even met the coach.
Never met Ken?
I eventually did.
Yeah, he was my boss later on, or one of them. So, no, that was just one of those places where you just always felt welcome. He was a very cool guy, and his daughters were super cool and would come out and support the stuff we did, and they were awesome. So Marie played in a band that I was at. She played in a band that played that night.
Model Rocket?
No, we were called Second Nature.
Oh, Second Nature.
She was our bass player.
Okay.
It was Brett Van Horn and Mike Mitchell and me and her.
Yeah, right on. I know she was in a band later with Jen, wasn't she?
Oh, I think so.
That was Model Rocket.
Oh, was that right? Was it her or was it Karen? You know what? I'm getting horribly confused.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to ask one of those girls one of these days on one of these episodes what exactly that whole thing was. So, okay. Over and over again, people will say, and Greg points this out in his episode 1 of this podcast, that it seems like really the Northwest can't happen without you. Like, it doesn't happen the way it came together. Because there was a point where it's like you were gathering together your crew. Like you were getting people to move to town. You were encouraging everyone to get to Seattle. And even if they wouldn't come to Seattle, you were like, well, fine, we're going to do shows in Bellingham. We're going to do shows in Spokane. When I book a show in Seattle, I'm going to see if I can also get 2 more shows and maybe one up in Canada. And for a little while, it was always, Ron's got this thing he's doing. Ron's setting this thing up. And so many of the people that I know that have been important in my life, I know them because I met them through you. That's basically the entire group of people from the Seattle area, outside of like the guys that I grew up with in Bellingham. So that crew that I knew there, and then the part of the reason was because you always had a show you were doing. There was a new band that you were excited about. It was a record coming out on Overkill. It was come to Seattle, hang out at my place. You guys can stay over at my apartment. So you were giving us a way to come down and stay over and spend more time in the city.
I was the gateway drug.
You were the gateway drug for me and for a lot of other people. And I thank you for that, because it was hugely influential to me and a lot of people. And I've said it a bunch of times before, but it's absolutely true. I think that if you hadn't become that, I mean, you were like an activist for Northwest Hardcore. If you had not become that in that 90, 91, and 92 kind of sliver of time, I can't see. Well, and a little longer than that, up into like 93, like really seriously with the building blocks, putting the building blocks in place. I don't know how, so many things have happened since then in the music scene. Stuff like Sanitary Real Estate and obviously stuff that Seattle is really known for wouldn't have been affected. But like a lot of the later on, a lot of like just the roots of the hardcore scene.
I think, we definitely put together the foundation for the hardcore scene. The hardcore scene we see today. We're going to see the Cro-Mags tomorrow.
Yes. I'm
going to bet really that probably wouldn't be happening if we hadn't built, got those people together back then. Because look at the people that we brought together. John Pettibone.
Yeah, but you don't say we. I was one of the guys that was brought into that group.
But everybody. Well, now here's the thing, though, Dave. It wasn't just you didn't get free entry. you had to do something. If you didn't do something, then, you know, you were no longer
So
on the inner circle.
you were identifying workers?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
man. You know, everyone needs to contribute. And if you're not contributing, it's Lex's pyramid, man.
I wonder if you were going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Explain Lex's pyramid.
I don't remember. It's the kids are the base. The
bands and the
are the
zines
the next label.
She drew it out at one point, right?
Yeah. And
Lex Spar.
yeah, and then like we were at the top because we were the guys who did shit and got everyone else motivated. But yeah, no, that was it. I wanted, and had been the way, you know, my entire life in music still to this day is I want everyone to be as involved as they can be, and then, you know, go further.
Yeah.
And then you do the same, you know, you now you grab a couple of people and you do the same. I mean, everyone has to contribute. If you're not contributing, then, you know, you're taking up space, you know?
Yeah.
Get involved, man. Buy yourself a gerbil.
It sounds like a song.
It does.
So you did, and I think
I've been doing zines since I was probably 14 maybe.
Yeah.
Just doing fanzines. No, maybe a little later, maybe 15 or something, but I probably have done, you know, 30 issues of, you know, 10 different zines over the years. So I just think that's the kind of thing you need to do. You have to do. Plus,
and you also,
I have an opinion and I want to share it. You know, I want people to know what the hell I think is cool and what I'm talking about and what's going on, because I think this is a really amazing thing that's happening here. Yeah.
No, and you're always confident in your opinion. And it's important. You got to have people that are like, no, listen to this because I said so.
Right.
And you're like, well, he's an authority on it.
Well, and then also I was able, you know, I was fortunate enough. It's one of the greatest things that's ever happened. I was fortunate enough to work at Fallout. Mm-hmm. And so I could, and even previous to working there, I was able to talk to Russ and Janet and say, hey, order these records. I'm buying a copy. She's buying a copy. He's buying a copy. You're going to sell 15 copies. No problem. I'll drag these kids in here and say, buy this, you know, and then also myself and other people, you know, we were getting, you know, we were acting as distro up here.
Mm-hmm. You were bringing a lot of records.
A ton of stuff. Yeah. And, you know, I have trading my own stuff off my own label to other labels, taking it into Fallout, putting it on consignment. Well, then I started working there. And that was the cool part, man, because then kids would come in and I'd be like, I'm the dude behind I'm back here now behind the register. This, you got to buy, like, Kinder. Kinder always says, like, yeah, man, I remember, or maybe it was Soto, or maybe it was the both of them. It's like,
they would be together, probably.
Probably, yeah. Right. It's like, we came in and you were like, you know, we had something in our hands. You're like, no, dude, buy this. And like, I got them to buy Hard Stance Face Reality. And they're like, that was it, man. You know, fuck, the rest of my life has been set. So that was great, man.
And it was something that was cool about Fallout, and Fallout Records and Skateboards was a Seattle institution. Just seriously an incredible place. There's a lot of cool record stores, but that was something. There's something special.
Yeah.
And you know, Janet was really good with me. Like, you know, after a while she figured, oh, that's that guy that's coming from Bellingham, and she knew the kind of stuff I liked. That wasn't the straight up hardcore straight edge stuff. You know, she'd turn me on to like Jawbreaker or Face to Face or some, you know, whatever kind of like in that world that I liked. And I always thought it was impressive that she had that, like, she's like, oh, this is, you know, he maybe doesn't have any idea about what, you know, there's no internet, right? So he doesn't know exactly what he's looking for. Mm-hmm. She never steered me wrong once. Every record she suggested I bought, I just like, this is wonderful, you know? So I totally get that. And I don't know that, I thought by the time you were working there, we already knew each other pretty well.
Probably.
I don't think you were yelling at me to buy stuff.
No. But, you know, others.
I was listening. That's awesome.
But I got to tell you, I pride myself in the fact that I never pushed any crap, and I would call crap bands out. Like if some, you know, hey, they got X's on their hands, yeah, but they are fucking horrible. You know, put that shit away. Stick with what's good. Don't let this watered down crap, you know, affect us. Well, we're building a scene here that we need to be proud of. That's going to be quality, not crap. Which I think goes a long way to what you and I, you know, working with Undertow.
You know? Right. So, okay. So Brotherhood, cultivates this young kid band, which is once again, you guys are just out there pulling people into things. And I believe it was Greg. I haven't had anyone from Undertow on the show yet, so I haven't like gotten the formation. I think
Mark's sister Tracy and Greg were going out, and this was either pre-Brotherhood or during Brotherhood. Definitely during Brotherhood, I guess. And one day, Greg's like, "Hey man, I'm coming." You know, I lived in the U District, and he's like, "Coming down. You know, well, we gotta go to Cellophane Square. You know, see what new records are in." And he's like, "Oh, and I'm bringing my girlfriend's little brother and her friend." It's like, dude, I'm an adult. Like, how old are these kids? Like, they're like 12. Like, all right, you're in charge. And these two little tiny kids roll up with Greg. Greg was a skinny little kid at the time as well. And he's like, "Yeah, you know, this is Mark and this is Ryan. They're in a band, man. They play, you know," and they probably took over like, "Yeah, you know, we love The Accused and da da da." It's like, fucking awesome, man. That's fucking great. And we immediately just took these kids under our wing and we're like, "Okay, you're in a band, you know, let's do it. Go get equipment, go write songs, go start doing stuff. We're playing the show. Greg knows your mom. Call her up." Well, shit, and you recall, and we would have to call their parents up. Like, yes, we are taking them on a 2-week West Coast tour.
You took Refuse on a tour? Or is this when they were Undertow, when they were a little bit older?
Joel was still in the band, so I remember I had to call Joel's dad. And had to go to his house and meet his dad. And, yeah, that was
Well,
creepy.
years later when it was Undertow, and they got Damien in the band. Damien was 17. He might have been 16 when he joined. So when we went on that U.S. tour in 93, Damien was 17 years old.
He was that young?
And had no driver's license.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember having to go to his parents' house one time, too. I remember if it was just to pick him up or what, but I remember having to meet his parents one time. And, you know, I wasn't that much older, but, you know, I was getting into my 20s.
But oftentimes you were the oldest and therefore perceived as the most responsible adult.
And I owned the van and, you know,
exactly
booked the tour. So, yeah, I guess, you know.
Okay. So you guys basically helped start at what became Undertow, which were...
We took these kids with us wherever if we were going to play a show, they were getting in the van, they were using our equipment. All they had to do was bring their guitars and themselves, and they're playing a show. And, I mean, Greg and I, honestly, we looked at it as, okay, in Seattle, we're the youth of today. They're the crippled youth. We're going to bring these kids with us wherever we go. Now we've got twice as many people. Now we've got twice as much music to play. We've got these 4 kids who we know they're going to be singing along to us. So, you know, it was perfect.
You built you brought your fan base.
We would, when we would go play, the van would be packed full of people.
And that's how I met those guys. I'm pretty sure I met all of those guys directly because of you. Certainly Pettibone. Pretty sure.
Well, and John's a perfect example. John sent me a letter, you know, as Brotherhood. Like, I got your demo at Fallout. Wrote him back. I was like, "Dude, we're playing a show this weekend. Drive over. You can stay at my house. You can go with all of us in the van. You'll meet everybody. We'll hang out. We'll come back. We'll all, you know, be all jazzed up and talking shit all night long. And then you can go off and play soccer in the morning," you know, because he was, I think, 15 or 16 at the time. And, you know, that's just the way it was.
And then shortly after that, he ends up playing bass in Undertow. Was that something that just came together?
Joel quit. Or, no. Joel's still in the band.
Yeah, he played bass when Joel was singing.
Because they had, like, just revolving door bass players, at all kids. Mm-hmm. And I remember Mark and I were sitting around, and he's like, what the hell are we going to do, man? And it's like, well, John's here. John's always here. Let's just teach John how to play bass. Which, to the extent John playing bass is like the old joke of Vinny Stigma playing guitar. Unplug him, turn him way down, just jump around and go crazy, man.
Yeah, but
these guys will cover everything else.
Once it came together, and those guys started playing at the party hall, and Pettibone was on bass. Once it really solidified with those 4 guys, or 5, I guess they had Seth playing guitar also. Pettibone definitely brought a real like vibe to their live. I mean, whether he was turned down, I mean, I remember hearing him, but I don't know. I didn't know if it was good. That's not my. You've probably heard my bass playing before. I know you have, Ron. So I'm not one to say. But what I can say is that like there was some dance. There were like dance moves were evolving. The way the crowd was reacting to the band.
Well, that's the other thing, yeah.
And so Pettibone would definitely like kind of lead that charge a little bit. And I remember right about the time when Undertow became a big deal. They broke up as Refused and then immediately reformed as Undertow. Right? They didn't want to say it was a name change. It was like a breakup in a new band.
Right.
If I remember correctly. But you'd see these guys, they'd all be wearing Turning Point shirts. And I'm sure it only meant like maybe 2 of them had a Turning Point shirt one time. But as far as like everyone in Bellingham was concerned, they just all wore Turning Point shirts and they looked like the dudes in Chain of Strength or Turning Point or whatever. It was that was their total vibe. And it just totally changed. And then they just got better and better. And it helped.
The thing. They got so good.
They got so good.
All of a sudden we had the best straight edge band in the country were sitting in our backyard. They were
seriously.
They were on our labels. They were our friends.
And they got so good that some people here got mad about it. Like, you're having an effect when there are people who are like, yeah, fuck those guys. Who do they think they are? Whenever you hear someone's making enough racket that someone else on the outside goes, who do they think they are? Then you
like contemporary at the time, contemporary hardcore bands or
certainly no.
Concurrent?
Well, okay. It's the funny thing.
None of the bands I was at.
The funny thing is, guys that I met years and years later would tell me, "Oh, we hated those guys. Oh, we hated Undertow. We hated Brotherhood." Like. Because we thought that they were everything, And now I realized those guys were actually doing stuff too, and we didn't really know them. And that's something that's weird is that a bunch of people that
take charge. Who are you talking about, man?
I'm not going to name anybody. Because some of these guys are going to get their own episodes. They can say whatever they want. Sure. But personally, in Bellingham, there was an entire contingent of like those skate punk kids that I hung around with that decided that they hated everyone from Seattle. I don't know if you remember that shit. And it was because they think that they can just come here. And I'm like, yeah, they think they can come here when we invite them to and play a show that's going to be killer. Let's go have fun. And they're like, no, fuck them. Okay. And there was even, it was really stupid. But I've noticed that just happens whenever someone really starts to get it together. You can see the grumblers on the side. And that's an indicator that things are going right. It's not an indicator necessarily that things are going wrong. Okay. So, Party Hall. The Party Hall.
Paula Sen and I, who she worked at Fallout. She was in Whipped.
Yep.
And awesome lady. And Curtis Pitts, who Sub Pop Employee of the Month. We were desperate for shows. We were desperate for places to put on shows. At the time, we had most of our shows were in Tacoma or in Bremerton. Or that was it,
Right, because Seattle had the teen dance ordinance.
Right.
And if you go back to episode 1 of this podcast, there's a whole breakdown of the teen dance ordinance and what became of it. And you get referenced in that as to what you were doing at this time.
We read up on what it was all about, and we thought we had figured out the loopholes that we could jump through. And we just said, well, let's find a venue. And I was living on Capitol Hill at the time, and I think we probably just drove by Dino's, and there was for rent for your parties or something. I mean, it was called the Party Hall. There was a sign that said the Party Hall. It was attached to Dino's, infamous Dino's. Everything, he owned everything on that block.
What was it, 22nd in Madison?
22nd or 23rd in Madison. It's now the Twilight Exit. I think it still is the Twilight Exit.
You know what? The building's gone.
Oh, it is?
Okay. And the Twilight Exit's moved 3 or 4 times since.
All right. Well, I don't know.
But no, if you drive down there, you'll be like, for a long time you could drive and just see the remains of our once great empire, right? But it's
I just went into Dino's store. I think it probably said if you want to rent, call this number or go next door, or something. And he was like, sure, fuck, whatever. Give me $100 and you can do whatever the hell you want. Just don't fuck up the pool table or something. And we just started putting on shows, and we discovered pretty quickly that the cops really weren't going to do anything. Like, the city wasn't going to do shit. Like, they didn't really care. So we started putting on shows. That place was great. It was amazing. We put on so many awesome shows there.
Saw Jawbreaker there on the Unfun tour. That was a big deal. I don't know if you put on that show.
See,
You
well,
were
there's
there.
a big part of a lot of that time I was going on tour with the Accused and as a roadie, you know, with them. So I missed there's a lot of things I missed and a lot of things I set up that other people finished because, you know, I was gone.
Right. It was like Born Against and Rorschach.
I set that up, but I
Go
wasn't
and Bad
there.
Trip. You were at that one.
I was at
think.
that, yeah, because that was awesome.
That was great. It was absolutely good. And that was one of the, I think, one of the Undertow shows where they really started to come into their own, too.
But there were so many shows there. I mean, the Accused would play there.
Aspirin Feast,
yeah,
Galleon's Lap.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, because that was the only place to play, and it was perfect. And there's a lot of fucked up shit that happened around that place, like, you know, people getting robbed.
Oh, people got
getting, you know,
it
shot
never
at
happened to
and
me,
shit,
but it
and-
happened to people I came down with. You know, for some reason, we always made it back to the car without trouble, and it was a rougher spot in Seattle.
It was a bad neighborhood, and this was
It's not
this
now.
was in the the late 80s, early 90s when there was a lot of gangsterish shit going on the streets of Seattle, and specifically in that neighborhood.
Right.
So,
And of course, that's where the space is available.
right. So it was perfect.
And it was just a few years later we were getting into shows through a secret alley entrance behind a piss-covered dumpster at Pioneer Square.
Oh, exactly, right.
Velvet
right,
Elvis.
right,
I mean, that's
right.
we go from the CD to the safer alley entrance for the Velvet Elvis.
You know, and also at the time of the party hall, because we would get bigger shows, and they wouldn't fit in the party hall. So then we found the Washington Hall.
Right.
And so we could start doing shows there, and that had just a much larger capacity. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. And like I said, nobody from the city ever came and said, "Hey, you kids, you can't do this. This is all ages." So I think they were ready to let it go. We had to be on their radar because, I mean, we did have cops coming when there were, you know, things happen like skinhead brawls. You know, cops would show up, so they knew we were doing something.
I wasn't at the show. It was one of the ones that I missed. We did Born Against, Rorschach, Downcast. We did that in Bellingham. The next night it was at the party hall. Someone tried to grab the cash box and
Right.
someone fired off a gun outside.
Right.
You were at the show, I'm assuming?
I was not at that show.
Okay, and the police came to that, and I think they just advised everybody to stay in the hall or something, to stay inside.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly, but I only heard about it, you know, secondhand, because of course that time I wasn't there. I had to work.
No, I was definitely out of town on tour. At
You were
that
out.
show.
You would have been out with the Accused then as a
Yeah.
roadman.
Yeah.
That sounds like when you were probably sending Bill pictures of skinheads in the mail.
It's hard to say. It had to have been. It couldn't have been during Brotherhood. Yeah, it had to have been later.
Okay, so December 1992. You and I have been friends for a while now. We talk on the phone. I come down and stay at your place. You've stayed at my place in Bellingham a few times when bands have played. You call me up and you say, "Larson, I've got a job for you and a place for you to live. It's time." And you said, if you come down here and fill out the application, you're in at Kinko's, and Derek Harn needs a roommate.
Oh, man.
December. And I had to make the decision, like, right then. Like, this has got to happen right now. Because you were like, there's no time, man. So before Christmas, I had quit my job, packed up all my stuff, and split to the big
That's the
city.
way we did it back then.
And somehow I managed to stay. It was like 6 rough months, and then it settled in. And the apartment with Harn didn't really work out. I ended up moving in with Derek Harn's ex-girlfriend, Jaden Schneeweiss, and Seahag. He came along later. And then, so that was not at the Caravilla, but at the Bonneville.
The second hardcore hotel.
The second hardcore hotel. I think we had to been the tip of the spear on that one to get in. And then a little bit, I don't remember how it is you moved in with me in that apartment.
I don't remember either, but I remember I ended up subletting it later to
Jeff DeGollier.
Yeah, and still had all my crap there. And then, God, I mean, I lived in that building for almost 15 years.
You lived with
in 3 or 4 different apartments.
Yeah, you lived with like the Dietzels in the university, like 65th, with Mike Dietzel, I think, in a house.
Yeah.
And then when that house came to an end, for whatever reason, you moved in with me. I just can't remember what the deal was.
Oh.
Like, how do you just show up? How are we just suddenly roommates? I have no concept of it coming together.
Are you sure there wasn't something else happening in between there? I believe there was. I think I moved to Ravenna, with Kirsten and Mike Dietzel and Eric Dietzel. And we had a house in Ravenna where Said Child played.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah. And Dry Gulch.
And Dry Gulch. And what was the other band? Tim's band. Or wasn't Tim's Sacramento band there as well?
Oh, God, maybe.
Or was Tim in Dry Gulch?
Oh, man. Like, I don't remember.
Huh.
I'm going to have a episode. One of those guys from Dry Gulch is going to have to give me the lowdown.
Yeah.
I don't know if Tim had come up yet.
Well, but I think I ended up breaking up with Kirsten, moving out of there. I was getting ready to go on tour, and I just needed a place to put my stuff.
You were getting ready to go on tour with
Seaweed
because you got a job as tour manager for Seaweed.
Right. And so that was it. And at the time, you didn't have a roommate. And I said, well, let me put my...
Schneeweiss and Hag were moving out.
That's what it was.
And so it was just I'll give you this much it's like you were like paying storage basically. And
yeah.
Then when you came, and then it was like, okay, but when we're in town, I need to be able to still come by and get my stuff. And
no, I need to live there.
Yeah. Well, in between tours, right? But like,
right.
If you guys just happen to be through for like a night, I remember during the time that you were my roommate. You know, you'd be gone for a month, you'd be gone for 6 weeks, and then there'd be maybe 2 nights where you were in town.
Right.
And this is like, you know, and then like Orange 9mm would show up and cause trouble.
We'd all be drunk in the...
Okay, yeah, this is after the sellout.
After Straight Edge, after I sold out.
Now, the sellout happens, you're straight edge when you move in.
Yeah.
You're not when you move out.
Right.
And that's not why you moved
out.
out.
About 94-ish, I think.
Oh, we got
maybe 95.
A little bit further. Yeah, into 95.
Okay, yeah.
Into it. And that was, I don't really remember any, I may have blocked it. I don't really remember any drama surrounding the...
It's horrible. I remember it all. I went and interviewed all the ex-straight edgers in Seattle, basically. I went, sat down with all of them. I can name some names, but they all know who they are. And I asked them, so why did you break Edge? Just really wanted to find out, what was it that, why? And to talk to them all, 3 or 4 people at the time was all that had done it at that time. And I thought, well, you know what? Those are all kind of the same reasons that I'm thinking about doing this. And that was it.
That was it. Our friendship survived it somehow.
Yeah. I stayed away from the scene for a little bit after that, or at least, the real hardcore straight edge scene, just because I felt, kind of, like a turncoat.
Now, Ron, there's a fun story about you during this time that I don't know that you know.
It's not true.
Which one? The sign outside the window?
Oh, no, I thought you were going to talk about that punk kid from Bellingham talking shit. I called that kid out as a poser when he first came to this scene.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, that kid who was in that band with Jamie. He hung out over there at Carrie's house with Sab and all those guys, and I would hear stories from Sabs like, oh yeah, all the straight edge kids were in the front room making fun of you and saying, oh, they saw you down on the, someplace, da-da-da-da-da. And I don't remember the kid's name. Maybe might have been Chad. I don't know. But I called his ass out when he first came to the scene. I told Jamie, like, that kid's a poser.
You literally just dropped names and called someone out. I don't know who you're talking about, and it's not what I was talking about.
Oh,
but it's still fine.
All right.
That is the level of shit talking we haven't had on this show before. But also, since I don't
fucking GUARDIPEE's fucking drunk walking down the street, walking down Broadway. It's like, what?
Wait, why would that have not been true though?
Well, it could have been, but
but no one needed to be saying it.
Well, there's that. But I think for some reason I recall being very upset because there's no way that was true at that time.
No, so
I did all my partying at Linda's.
The thing I'm talking about is after the Bonneville became a place that had like 6 different apartments that people lived in, and it was a lot of younger people than you. And one of your issues at the time, it's funny that you brought up the Mark and Ryan being like 12 when you were like 22. One of the problems that you were having more and more was that you were having a hard time with younger people coming into the scene.
I wouldn't say coming into the scene. I was having a harder time hanging out with them.
Right.
I didn't want to hang around with these kids.
But it was kind of one of those things where there would be more and more of us at each event. If we were over at a friend's house or at a party, the crew wasn't 5 people anymore. It was 12 people, and number 12 was someone's 14-year-old brother, and you were getting uncomfortable with that. Yeah. And I don't know that you're wrong to have been uncomfortable with that, but I remember it was a bigger issue for you than it was for those of us who were just a few years younger, right?
Yeah.
And
I remember one specific thing. I was sitting there, and it might have been at a party, it might have been a show. But just listening to two kids, really, really young, small, short kids, and it wasn't Freddie, so I don't know who it was. And just hearing them talk about some inane shit from high school, and I was just like, fuck, man, I'm like 25 now. It's like, I don't want to be hanging out with 15-year-old kids who are talking about high school. Not like I'm that old, but
right.
At the time I was the oldest dude in the scene, and
that's the thing. You were out on that,
and I was hanging.
You were out on that edge,
and I was also spending so much more time on tour with all these dudes
that were actually
my age, doing this really cool shit around the country, and then come back and like, this isn't what I want to talk about. This isn't what I'm interested in.
Right. What would they have been talking about then? I don't know.
Algebra.
Saved by the Bell.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking Zach on Saved by the Bell.
So, there was I did not witness it, but a bunch of the people that lived on the other side of the Bonneville were hanging out one night, and I know that Anthony Wentz was there. He was staying with someone, and Todd Graham and some other people, and you and Greg Anderson had parked, or you were walking back, and you were coming along the side of the building, and you were going to go back to your apartment. And at this point in time, you had moved out of the apartment with me into your own apartment.
Yeah.
And it was your total bachelor pad.
Yeah.
And we were still working together at Kinko's, and everything was cool.
This is when Greg and Steve ruled the scene.
You guys were doing stuff, and you were not like hanging out with these people from the other side of the apartment. You didn't really know them.
I would tell you right now, I was absolutely unaware that they even lived there.
There you go. And one of the apartments had these couple young girls that lived there, and they were right on the ground floor. So this happened right outside their window, and they were terrified. So you guys were walking, and the story goes, they heard some noise outside, and they looked out the window, like peeked the blinds, right? And at the apartment next door, those two girls were doing the exact same thing. So just imagine you're outside on the sidewalk and the street alongside the Bonneville, right, and there's two apartments with people peeking through the blinders at you, okay?
Okay.
And they said that you were running backwards into this no parking sign, and Greg was like doubled over laughing, slapping his knees and going, "You need to knock it down!" And they said you kept like running forward and then getting up ahead of Steve, then running back and trying to smash it. You were trying to break the sign down.
I love it.
Oh, dude. Now, even if that didn't happen, it happened.
That definitely happened.
Okay,
something like that. No, that was right up our alley.
And so here's the thing: the dudes, like Todd and Helen's, like they were all just laughing, like that's Rod, and Greg from Brother. And like the girls were transplants from out of town, and they were much younger, and apparently they were terrified that you guys were gonna come through the window.
I'm sure we looked pretty gnarly at the time. We both probably had really long hair.
Oh yeah,
like beards and
crazy.
Probably
drunk
looked a lot like what we look like now, but
exactly.
More drunk and
just destroying stuff outside the Bonneville, and that's become kind of a famous story. Like I think there are more people now that would claim they saw it than could possibly have actually witnessed it. And it was told to me, but in my mind I have the visuals of it.
I can see it perfect.
So that one's not someone talking shit about you. That's just reality.
I'm guessing that really did happen, yeah.
All right, cool. Okay, so
we like I said, we terrorized Seattle, especially Capitol Hill for a few years there, the three of us. And that was the stuff we did. Stupid shit like that. Breaking shit, stealing shit.
And you're my boss at Kinko's downtown at that point too. You're were you an assistant manager down there?
I think so, yeah, at that time, yeah.
At the Kinko's at Second Union.
I don't know if I was the assistant manager then, but I mean, I was up there
at various times. Yeah. So we kept swimming in these Kinko's waters that went on up through the
like Derek was there and Deanna was there. I mean, it was like that was a little hardcore, family in its own. Carrie was there.
Yeah, it's funny because Greg said, and I didn't get a chance to really expand on this when he was talking, but he said, I met Bill at Kinko's, and how would I have known to go to Kinko's? And I'm like, oh, that's just what everybody did. But no, like, if you were involved in the hardcore scene, you spent a significant amount of time in a Kinko's in Seattle.
Well, I think I might have gotten probably 15 people jobs there, all people from the hardcore scene.
Absolutely.
And, at certain points, like, you'd walk in, and it's like, oh, it's a show.
And I believe the only reason that I even got the courier job down at the one we worked at in Second Union is because Greg had left his job to go on tour or something.
Yeah, Greg worked there. Steve O'Malley worked there.
Yep.
Like, two dudes from Sun, the guys I'm talking about, the hardcore kids worked there. Everybody worked there. It was awesome. It was a great place to work.
Well, then what happens from that point forward? Because there is a period of time when there's less Ron around.
Well, I was
late 90s into.
I was on tour with Seaweed, and that was getting pretty serious. Like, that was probably about 2.5 years, and every, the tours were more frequent and longer. And then they decided all of a sudden, okay, well, we have to record a new record, so we're going to take a year off of touring, and we're going to record. And I'm like, wow, damn it. I'm really loving this being on tour stuff. I don't want to have to go back to work. So went back to work for a very short period of time and was working graveyard actually up on Capitol Hill. And this was probably only a couple of months after, ending my relationship of touring with Seaweed. And just out of the blue, man, I get this phone call. And this was at a time when people loved to prank phone call each other. When we all actually had home phones. I get this phone call and it's like, hey, man, this is Chaka from Burn, Orange 9mm. I don't know exactly what he said, but this is Chaka, man. And I'm doing a horrible Chaka. It's like, we met. You were on tour, with Seaweed. You guys were on tour with Quicksand. I met you. We're getting ready to start some heavy touring. What are you doing? And I was like, I was breaking up with a girlfriend at the time. So I was like, I got to get the hell out of here. I want to be on tour. I don't want to see this girl around because it's going to kill me. So I'm like,
I saw that girl this weekend.
Like, I'm in, man. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We both went up to her parents are both up in Bellingham. They live like a block away from each other. And I was going up to see my parents. So just shared the ride.
Cool. How's she doing?
Great.
So yeah, and this was just incredible. And I'm like, so when are we? When's it happening, man? When do I need to leave? There'll be tickets to your house FedEx tomorrow morning. Like, you got to come like the next day. So 2 days. Like, all right. So I just called up work the next morning. I said, sorry, I quit, and that was it, man. And then another like 2-year stretch, and that was heavy duty. That was so much fun.
You went all over the world, right?
Oh, yeah. And that was the most fun I had right up until the very end when it was just horrible. But
what is
I brought in...
Oh, you brought in?
Well, I was going to say, like, I think I merged these crews together. And they built friendships there between these New York guys and these Seattle people that these people are still super tight friends. I mean, it was just so perfect. It's just all worked together great. And sure, half of them was because, these Seattle chicks were hooking up with all these New York dudes, but whatever, it worked out.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
But when those guys would come to Seattle, they knew they were gonna have a good time. They knew everything was gonna be fun. They knew everybody was gonna be cool, and it was a great relationship. And the only thing that went wrong with it was the management company.
Yeah,
or I'd still. I'd probably would have done every Orange 9mm tour, but I couldn't handle dealing with. Their manager at the time managed Skid Row, Kiss, Motley Crue, all the biggies, drawing a blank on the guy's name, right? Doc McGee. And they were just so pissed that their little, boutique bands, Civ, Quicksand, Orange 9mm, not so much Quicksand, but, Civ and Orange 9, they weren't blowing up like they were supposed to. These guys are supposed to be the next grunge.
Right.
And they weren't. And, it was just a lot of bullshit.
And it was right at that time when they were managing to get the videos on MTV.
Things were starting to happen.
And Warped Tour was happening.
Yep.
And so, it was cool. It was a cool time, but it was just a cool time for those of us that were already kind of really into it.
Right.
And then I don't know if they were building a whole lot of a big enough fan base for a band on a label, Also, I think expectations were still that bands on majors would perform to a certain level. And I don't know if that's the case anymore because no one sells records anymore.
Yeah. And this was still a time of vinyl, actually,
right.
then. And look, Quicksand are huge. I mean, they got success, but it's because they were incredible. They're an incredible band. Orange Down Millimeter, maybe not so much.
They were good at the time.
Yeah, it was a hell of a lot of fun. I'm gonna tell you that, man. Some of the greatest times I ever had. Stories I'll never forget.
What's a story that you can tell? Look, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to the stories you can't tell and back out until you can tell one.
I don't even know. Because I'm not really. I haven't had much contact with these guys.
Oh, because you're telling their stories too.
Yeah, I don't know if I feel comfortable doing that. I mean, and mine aren't really that interesting. I was actually telling a story last night about it, but it's really not that. It was just more bragging. Like, oh yeah, well, when I was over there, check out what I did. Yeah, and there's just some that are just. One time randomly, it was 4th of July. We're on tour with Biohazard, so it's Biohazard, like Sick of It All, and Orange on Millimeter, and we're in Amsterdam, and it's 4th of July, and Bobby from Biohazard has bought a shitload of fireworks, so we're just planning to have this big fireworks party. The club's right on this river. At this point, everybody's drinking and partying, and we walk in backstage. And I remember I look over, and there's the Jim Rose Freak Show, and I knew these guys, so I was like, "Whoa, what the hell?" And Mr. Lifto, who I had known forever from the punk rock scene, was like, "Ron!" I'm like, Joe, Mr. Lifto, what's up? So I don't know. I thought that was always thought that was kind of a cool story.
You just ran into them randomly on 4th of July.
Like, oh, everyone, the freak from the Freak Show, I know him. He's my buddy. It's not that good of a story, but
no, it's cool though. I mean, it's always interesting when you go somewhere else in the world. You'll just run into someone that you know. It doesn't make. Nate Turpin, who was on here, has a story about he went down to Antarctica to, I'm going to say it wrong, McMurdo Station.
McMurdo, I think, but yeah.
And he gets there to do work, like he's on some scientific expedition. I'm into our stories. I can't hardly be thinking about his. Yeah. But, person washing dishes in the back room is someone he knew from school. Like, but unaffiliated, with what he was doing. He wasn't expecting to know anybody down there. You just, I ran into, in that 93 tour with Undertow and Sparkmarker, I'm out with those guys. We're walking one way in Virginia Beach, on the beach, and Greg Anderson and the other dudes from Engine Kit are walking the other way, and they weren't on any show. They just happened to be also out on tour and on the East Coast, and they were like, we got them on the show that night because they were like, hey, what are you guys doing here? But it was very strange because we did not expect to just kind of look up and see Seattle guys. No one else really on the beach, just walking towards us. So it just happens. You'll gravitate towards people that you know in the world for some strange reason. All right, so we're over 2 hours.
Wow.
It just.
Well, maybe that'll have to be a part 2. Huh?
I would say that you and I could definitely do a part 2 because there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff that we could go over. We haven't even
talked about all the stuff that you and I did together,
right?
Which was just a vast amount of
well, we got
fun.
We got a history of Ron up through the 90s, So what I tend to do is we basically have to start calling it here. But what I know that you're putting on shows now. Mm-hmm. And there's something going on with Overkill.
Started the label back up. Greg and I did a split, reissued the Brotherhood LP as a split. We wanted other people to do it, but we just couldn't come to terms with anybody, and we're getting just low offers that we didn't want to take. So he didn't want to do it on Southern Lord. And I said, well, I'll put in half the money. You put in half the money. You've got the mighty Southern Lord behind you, so we have that. You can take care of all of this stuff. Now you don't need to make that big of an investment because I'll do it, and we'll just call it a split. Which is what it is. Half paid between Overkill and Southern Lord. So that came out. Before that was going to happen, though, I was going to put out this band from the Tri-Cities called The Drip. A grindcore band, and had them record, got it mastered, and another label came in and said, hey, we heard this, and we want to put it out, a much bigger label, Relapse Records.
Oh, wow.
So, and I was like, well, that's cool by me. These guys are going to get, much better deal here. So that happened. Right now, I just had this band from Lewiston, Idaho called Diazepam. They sound like Burning Witch or I Hate God kind of stuff. Really fucking heavy. They just recorded. So they just finished recording like less than a month ago. So that'll be coming out sometime this year. And then a couple other things that I'm hoping will work out.
Cool. And is it going to be, I mean, I haven't put out a record myself for years, have you been dealing with the turnaround times on everything? And
so far just with the Brotherhood.
And okay.
And it all happened pretty quick.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah. But like I said, Greg has had his established relationship with the pressing plant and
exactly.
with everybody else and the printer. So yeah, I expect delays.
So how long has it been since you have put in the order and got the boxes of records for something that you put out yourself?
I don't know. The last thing would have been No Escape, maybe? Or did I? Oh, no. The Strain. I think the Strain was the last thing I did. The Strain or Control. God, I don't know, man.
Well, those are in Dutch East too.
Yeah.
Like and you're not doing this.
So
through another...
that's me 100%.
Yeah,
would
man.
Have been
you're gonna
integrity.
you're gonna be folding the covers and everything, right?
Would have been the integrity.
That's been a long time. I'm kind of excited for you. I'm gonna have to live vicariously through you because it's not on the radar for me to put out anything for a little bit or ever. Well, Ram and I kind of have a deal that we will keep each other from doing record labels again. And if you had wanted it on that deal, we might have saved you grief.
Honestly, I'm always hoping, like the first thing that happened will happen again. Like, yeah, I'm going to put this thing out. And then somebody else comes along and says, dude, you picked a good band. Let us put them out. And then I can just sit back and be like,
you're cultivating.
Right.
Oh.
Hey, so I'm
you've
freelance
always
A&R guy.
You've always known, like you said, you always said, no, that's good. That's crap.
I wish I had been better at that, but yeah, I wish I was better at it.
What other prospects you got? What other things you got going on?
That's it, man. Slang in the mail.
Because you work for the post office.
Because I'm a mailman.
That's awesome.
That's about it, man. I'm just hanging out in Spokane and coming over here as often as possible, and nothing else big on the set up in the future.
When are we gonna hear you sing in a band again?
Well, you know what? The opportunities always come up, but and I did a couple of things, went out and sang with somebody. It's just not. It's not the same as it used to be. The feeling isn't the same. It's just not as much fun.
Yeah.
And there's just so many people who can do it so much better than me now.
Do you think it's off the table, or do you think you may do it at some point?
You know what? I was just screaming into a mic last weekend, and it was a lot of fun, but we were just sitting around, screwing around, with my old Hateful Youth buddies and, just playing, just screwing around. But I don't think I'd ever want to do it. Being in a band's a huge pain in the ass. I mean,
it is.
Yeah.
I haven't done it for a long time either.
I hate practice. Yeah. So I doubt it.
All right. Well, man, thank you so much for coming out and
Thank
having
you, Dave.
a long talk. This has been I mean, when I knew I was going to do this podcast, like, you're probably first name on the list. Like, oh, this is going to have to happen.
Cool. Well,
just if it's an excuse to get, to get you to come over and be in the same room, because it's been so long since we've been able to spend any, decent time together.
Yeah, it has. You're a good friend, Dave.
I appreciate it.
I was very happy to do this.
Thanks a lot, man.